you. Okay. Good. Someone please move the consent agenda. Moved by Director Rainbow, seconded by Director Richmond.
I was gonna say, who's that guy?
Yeah.
Get your name right. Okay, all in favor? Are there any opposed? Motion carries. Is there any business arising from the minutes? Seeing that. 7.1, Area Directors Committee recommendation of July 10th. We have several, so we are moving to Colin is here. Thank you.
Everyone.
And Director LaFrance is online. And we are hearing about the Canada Community Building Fund, Community Works, project funding requests. On to you.
Yep, so this request is just looking to allocate community works funds for different projects. The first is $30,394 for a new toilet in the Gates Lake Park. The second is $100,000 to Hamilton Meadows Fire Association towards a new fire hall structure that they're looking to build. Third is $10,000 towards Lillooet Nation towards the redevelopment of teacher residence at the Coast Mountain Outdoor School. And the last is $52,000 for the hub building heating system, HVAC system towards the Lillooet Learning Community Society.
Go ahead.
To the chair, can you tell me when we install the heat pumps and we spend that money, do the rebates are 1,000 and 2,000? Can be both for the heat pumps? Does the SLRD staff, they apply for those grants to get those rebates back? And if they do, does that go back into Area B funding or? How does that work?
I'm not sure on who would have to apply. I can follow up with the hub building and the Lillooet Learning Community Society and see if we can apply for those rebates. And if we did get the rebates, we could probably return that funding to the CWF fund.
Okay, thank you.
Doesn't go to the mayor's fund.
Sorry. Director Peckendale, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, when I looked at the numbers, area B and C seem to have significant unallocated funds. Does this spending sort of make use of those funds, or is that still the circumstance after the proposed spending?
Those numbers include these projects that have been included in this report, so that's the remaining funding after accounting for all of those funds. So area B and C still do have considerable funds. There's a 5-year timeline to spend that fund.
Okay, so the plan is to definitely make use of those. I'm just thinking, we have asset management and diking and community energy and all kinds of demands, and so it's just sort of wondering why we're sort of leaving money. But it sounds like we have a plan in the sort of immediate or near future to sort of make use of that.
Yeah, like we've been trying to find projects to use that funding for, and we've just received the new agreement to extend the CWF program for another 10 years. And that's actually opened up more categories. So there's a report coming later that I'll speak to the new categories and stuff, and we'll try and find ways to allocate those funds.
And Director LaFrance, go ahead.
Yeah, I will bring it up at the next Community Works Fund Agreement report as well, but I went on a webinar yesterday for the Community Works Funds, and they snuck in new changes for third-party submissions of Community Works Funds that wasn't in the FAQ that they provided us. We had to have such a quick turnaround with this report to the EAD that we didn't get through all of the guide that they provided. So I just wanted to note that we might have to come back and change these resolutions in the future because of these new third-party requirements, because we're sending funding away. These were kind of in the works before we received this new agreement, but technically this agreement is effective April 1st, 2024. So these new resolutions for funding are in effect the new agreement. So we might have to come back to the board with updates to these resolutions, but for now, we will keep them as is. And we'll go through the new requirements now, or when we go through the agreement, if whatever the board prefers.
Thank you, and Director.
Yeah, so just for your knowledge, like Area C, the money that we have left in there, we could spend that in one day if we wanted to on projects that need to be done in Area C, infrastructure stuff. We've got water issues in Darcy and Divine, new fire truck or newer fire truck for Birkin, in addition to their fire hall, so on and on and on. The money that is there is not near enough to cover those expenses. So that funding will definitely be spent. We're trying to prioritize the amount of money that we spend on each project, because there's only so much, right? There's not enough to do them all by any stretch. And even with the new funding coming forward, there'll never be enough money in a lump sum. We've got some water issues in Pemberton North that need to be dealt with, and we're dealing with some of that stuff this year. New fire hydrants and new pressure gauges and stuff like that. So, yeah, that money will definitely be spent, and if we had 10 times as much, it would be spent. Anyways.
Can I second what Russell just said?
Thank
Yeah,
you.
that's
For the
true.
record.
It's true for A, B and D as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh, and sorry, Director Birch Jones.
Thanks. I think it's pretty much covered. Just to reassure Director Pettingill, there's no end of ideas that we have for the spending of those funds. I'm really happy with the additions to some of the categories. I have some very good ideas that fit, but also I'm a little bit on hold waiting for staff. For example, we're looking at Seton Fire Hall. I've earmarked some money for that. I perhaps should put a number on it and set it aside. But if we get our plans in place in time to meet some of the grants that come available, for example, if I had something for the Seton Fire Hall now, we could put in for some matching money through there's lots of different funds, and I'm trying to make the best use of that money, but also I'm a little bit held up waiting for staff to turn their attention to some of these projects. And that's happening in its own good time. But as Director Mack just said, I could easily spend what we have in B there yesterday. It's just trying to strategically make the best use of it. And also, like for Suzanne and Colin, you guys have been super helpful with getting us to where we have these successful projects under this fund. So I wanted to say thank you for that. Yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions for staff? Seeing none. Would someone can we move them all together? No, each one is separate.
One.
Okay,
And then
so
the next three.
right. So that up to $30,394.04 be allocated from Area C Community Works funds to the Gates Lake Park Service towards the purchase and installation of a second public toilet. Someone like to move that? Moved by Director Mack, seconded by Director Rainbow. Comments? All in favor? Are there any opposed? Motion carries. And then the next three that can be managed together. So who would like to move those three, please? Moved by Director Mack, seconded by Director Rainbow. Comments? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries.
Great, thank you.
Thanks.
Our next 7.1.2 is an information report. The long-awaited SLRD Fire Services Review. This was initially presented to the Area Directors Committee on July the 10th. An excellent presentation. I did circulate the minutes to watch those, but we do have Director Mark Phillips here and Chief Van Duren here to give us a high-level tops of the waves overview, and then we can get into questions and discussion. Director Mack.
Can I just thank these guys beforehand for a wonderful report, and appreciate that very much. I think all the area directors appreciate it because we're going in the right direction, so excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, through the chair, thank you, directors. So where we're at, so up until this point is the review is complete, and I would call that sort of the first step in fire services modernization and just getting better at what we do in terms of building safer communities. Next steps will be planning. So there'll be some planning required and prioritization of the long laundry list of things that we can work on. And then post-planning is the actual implementation of the plans we create and change. And then the final step would then be operationalization and annual review. And thus far, I have the fire services review report in the presentation, and I think that's been shared with everybody here. And essentially, we have huge opportunity to lean forward and to collaborate and work with our fire service partners and the organizations that support us today to help them make their firefighters safer and just get better at service delivery in general and align what we do with the expectations of regulatory bodies in the province for fire services in 2024. Did you want to top up anything else?
Okay. Thank you. Question? Go ahead, Director Mack.
Yeah, so I guess going forward, as we've talked about, say the Burken Fire Department, for instance, they're right at the moment, they have a very engaging fire chief. Is keen and wants to move forward. So obviously, once we start moving forward with this, you'll be, and I'm sure you've already been in touch with them because we've talked about that. But yeah, we need to take advantage of their enthusiasm. Same thing with the Upper Meadows and the same thing with all the fire departments in the region. Everybody's infused, and with all the issues we've got going on everywhere, it just is more and more important all the time. And like I say, you know, the Upper Meadows, we as a group have to figure out how we're gonna fund those people properly and all that kind of stuff. But they've also got a keen group of people. We were at Pemberton's Fire Training Center opening the other day. You were there. That's a wonderful, wonderful thing for our whole area and beyond. I mean, it's super professional. They're professional. So, and there was representation there from all the departments locally. So that's all good stuff. We just need to capitalize on that. So thank you so much for that. Thanks.
Director Hopwell, go ahead.
Yes, thank you for the presentation. It was a great presentation. When I watched it, I wanted to thank Director Rainbow for his suggestion as well. So I thought I'd just put it out there is our new CAO, Joe McCullough, is and you might even know him, he's got a lot of experience on the provincial wildfire. And this past year, the district allocated more money. We raised our taxes a bit. We allocated more money to our fire department to hire a deputy fire department or chief, so that we could actually keep up with what everything is going on too. So I wanted to put that out there because I think it's important that, you know, if Joe could be part of those conversations as well, because being in Lillooet and being part of that area A, B, and C, that it's quite a huge area. And like Director Rainbow said, if a fire starts out there and a fire chief is located in Whistler, I mean, it takes a long time to get up to those areas and work that. So, yeah, I just, like I said, I wanted to put that out there that we have allocated money and maybe we can work together. Maybe we can find some sort of cost sharing ideas that would help, you know, SLRD as well as all the areas and the district of Lillooet. So thank you.
Thank you, Director.
Okay, all right, following on that.
Yeah, so I talked to Mark and to Rob about this, like, so going forward and implementing all these recommendations over a period of time, I think we as a board are gonna have to really think about, the fire chief is gonna need assistance in doing this, because we are such a huge area. Other regional districts have added, you know, up to a half a dozen new deputy fire chiefs throughout their area to bring everybody up to speed. And I think that we really need to, when budget time comes, and I'll be putting it forward, to put money forward to hire a deputy chief or however you want to name that person, structure it, whatever, but to implement all this stuff, they're going to need help. So we need to move that forward because, like I say, this is a great report and this is really going to help our whole area, paid departments, volunteer departments, whatever, right? So
Well,
just be aware that'll be coming.
understanding where all of the tools,
Yeah.
whether they're actual tools or teams, live in the region and how they work together and building those relationships so that they can call on one another. So that when something happens in one area, everyone else is ready, as we're seeing with Shetland Creek going right now.
Yep.
That's not in our region, but it is going to affect us in one way or another. And so I think the work that this plan does is it shows coordinated efforts and puts the tools in the hands of this team so that they can come back to us before the budget with, here's the prioritization of all of the things we are going to need as a region, because we can't escape this. We do need to understand how this is going to be funded. It's not going to be simple, and we certainly don't want to do this one-off, react over here and try and plan for, you know, something over there. I think that there's a whole plan here. And I think the board is very supportive. We've put forward this plan and this is an iterative process to get us to a place where we'll all be supported and how municipalities interlink with these and where the, you know, I think the most important thing when a citizen considers their evacuation plan or their go bag or their shelter in place plan, because that's what we ask our citizens to do, is to prepare for themselves first and know that the emergency services will be there to coordinate. When they have that plan, the scariest thing is to understand, where does the line get drawn? When you see those signs on the highway that says you are now entering a 911 area, what was behind me? So I think that understanding of what the services are is it's going to make our region stronger and better prepared going into this uncertain future. So thank you for that.
Just to add to that, so like when I was the fire chief here, we didn't have near the capabilities equipment wise that we do now. And I always said, you know, individually, we didn't have enough to do our job, but collectively, we definitely did. And that's the same today. So we need mutual aid agreements between all the communities so that everybody can interact. But if you put all the equipment that's in this corridor together, we have lots of equipment and lots of manpower and expertise and all that stuff. So that's something we really have to focus on. Thanks.
So I do have a list. I'm going to go Director Demare, Director Pettengill, Director Birch Jones, and then Director Rainbow. And we're going to carry on. So go ahead.
Yeah, I've thanked you before at the AD and I'll thank you again. It was an excellent report. So I've got 3 points I want to make. And on page 35 of the fire service review, or 97 of the full package, are the regional recommendations. So I feel the most important recommendation of this report is the engagement strategies, as we must have community input to move forward. That's a prerogative. To me, that's the most important recommendation in there. The next, I'm just gonna read this out. Being in a rural remote location and look at many years forward, and I do mean many years forward, it would be great if one day the 3 local fire societies in the Upper Bridge River Valley had the following. All the wildland fire certifications so they can take part in the CCWR program, the Community Cooperative Wildfire Response Program with BC Wildfire. That they also have agreements in place with BC Wildfire to perform initial attack on the wildfires until BC Wildfire arrives, which is mentioned in the report. Have certifications for exterior operations on private property and have mutual aid agreements. And as you've stated, it only takes 5 to be able to do that, 5 certified firefighters. Have certifications as first responders agreements with BC Ambulance Service, again, which is in the report. Certified for rescue requirements and agreements with provincial agencies or other nonprofit organizations such as Permanent SARS. I know all this will take time and funding, but in the end, if this does happen, it will help the valley as we are always the first responders to any incident in the valley. But we have volunteer issues due to age and availability of full-time residents year-round, but mutual aid agreements should help with this issue. I've got one question. Where will the funding for the recommendations come from? And is there any government funding available through UBCM?
So, yes, to answer your, and through the chair, director, there is a new opportunity actually as of this fall from the UBCM in the CEPF funding stream, specifically for fire departments that are working towards regulatory compliance as determined by the local area AHJ. So there's a big opportunity there where we can gain some really momentum and inertia in terms of reforms. And I do intend to put a grant together, an internal grant as a part of the planning going forward to take advantage of that grant opportunity. And I've already engaged with the UBCM. And there's an analyst there I've been working with in terms of their expectation and their suggested structure for the grant. So more to come on that. In terms of where the funding is going to come from, what I would like to do is cost and prioritization first as a part of the planning process. And then I'll bring some more information to this table at a future date, hopefully September, and then we can discuss our opportunities there.
So if you're doing that work, is that coming from general government? The funding for
My time?
Yeah.
No is, and Suzanne might be a good person to chat about it, but there's a portion of my time is allocated to each of our formally established fire protection areas. So for example, I split my time across Birkin, Braylorn, Gun Lake, Garibaldi to Britannia, because they're all formally established fire protection areas that I support as a part of my primary job function. And that's the current structure.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And Director Pettengill.
Yeah, thanks. And I have a couple questions which are maybe best answered by the board, but to the degree staff have some perspective, I appreciate hearing it. So if I understood the report correctly, news services are generally spring up from the citizens sort of, you know, for wanting to form a service and seeking a tax service and so on to fund it. But with our regional growth strategy, we have guidance around directing settlement to settlement areas and so on. So, I mean, in my mind, going forward, you might not encourage new fire services and new settlement areas outside of existing settlements. I'm just sort of wanting to, I guess, understand those concepts. Like, is it our thought that anywhere a group of citizens anywhere said, hey, we want to start a fire service, that we would actually sort of automatically start pursuing that? Or we sort of take a little bit of a look and say, well, it's not actually a settlement area, maybe we don't want to encourage that? Or
through the chair, I think
Yeah, complex question. I think for any, I mean, if there is a want, or from the community, I think there would have to be a feasibility kind of study about, is it actually, are we able, is there volunteer, is there the base? That fire service is not necessarily cheap to set up. So I think that's one of the questions that we would always kind of, before we'd actually start looking at moving forward with it. But in terms of, yeah, the kind of policy level decision, look to the board and to our planning department to, yeah, advise. And obviously, as we're considering these things, we would be bringing them to the board for decision.
Okay, thanks. And then the second one, the report largely focused on fire response. You did talk a little bit about some other sorts of response, but we see, you know, in Squamish and other places, the fire service, they're first responders and they're responding to everything. And as we see the expectation demands on us for emergency response, whether it's landslides or floods or anything, I'm just looking for some understanding of what expectations we might have of these fire services. There's a lot of talk about scope creep and making sure we're not getting into that. But is there that sort of expectation, sort of elephant in the room expectation that we're actually kind of expecting these folks to fill all these roles? Or I'm just wondering how we're thinking about that. Or
Through the chair, I think this is one of the, I mean, with our established fire departments in Garibaldi and in Britannia, that is one of the big values of them. We have clear relationship with them. They are part of our EOC, and they can be tasked to help support in emergency response. They are the responders in the area. And also there's other benefits. I mean, they are our fire smart champions on the ground. They're the ones pushing the community. So there is definitely a benefit to have that clear relationship, where in those areas where we do not have that kind of the clarity of the relationship and there's a clear reporting structure, it is a much different relationship in our EOC that we have our SLRD EOC, and then we have external groups. And so that ability to support them through task numbers and other means, and just our staff being able to be behind them is a lot more challenging when they're not as part of the SLRD. So definitely they are, and I mean, in the community's eyes, they are the first responders, and they are the ones that the community looks to for direction in those times.
Okay, thank you. Oh, is it a follow-on to that?
Yeah, just to follow up on that, like, so we just had that landslide flood area thing in Area C, Pool Creek area. Brick and Fire was on the scene, and they're doing the initial assessment just to make sure nobody's trapped, blah, blah, blah. So that's part of their role. So I think we just have to keep that in mind. And I think as we go forward, they will be involved in more and more initial assessments of situations. And then the other folks show up and they take over, just like going to a medical emergency call. You go in, you stabilize the scene, EHS shows up, and then you back off and let them do their job. But response time is the number one critical thing in all emergencies. So the sooner you get somebody on scene to assess it or whatever, the better. Thanks.
Director Birch Jones, you're next.
Thank you. And I really appreciated this report, and we had a good discussion about it at the EAD, but it still very much neglects Area B, and I appreciate that our fire chief has a lot to do down there and is more than fully occupied. I also appreciate, I just heard this morning from Chief Van Dorm that he's considering the role of the SLRD in his department as the authority having jurisdiction for some of the small brigade groups I have in Area B. So that's good news. I would like our EOC people and our fire chief to know who our fire wardens are, who our First Nations fire groups are, who the contacts are. I know you're a long way from that, but the suggestion was, well, we should have a second position and it should be located in the north. And I understand the objections to that and some of the impractical aspects of that. But I also see, like in the reading of this, citizens can assemble, train, and become recognized as cooperative community wildfire response groups, which Director Demare just referred to. We certainly have that going on here up in Area B, and I would really appreciate if they got some communication and support from our SLRD staff. So, you know, I have requests for funding for things, and I've just been asked to put a pause on those, funding those services as a short term. So maybe I should just pause myself for a second, Chief Van Dorm, and ask you, is there any kind of timeline for me and the groups up here? And we talked about this at the EAD, but from your response just yesterday or this morning, I just wondered when you were thinking of kind of reaching out to this part of the world, because we, you know, maybe the small and sparse population, however, it's a pretty high risk. And I mean, that Shetland Creek fire, I've got the pavilion guys are actively out there right now. I don't know if you've been in communication with them at all. I did send you one update, but I'd like you to be able to be aware of what these groups are doing and provide them some sort of support. And I'd like to know some kind of a timeline for when I can actually proceed to help with funding them with some equipment and so forth, which I have been doing, but it's been very ad hoc. Nonetheless, I can't tell you how much I value them. They are there, they are responding, they're training, and I'd like there to be a stronger relationship here. There's also, just to complicate your life, you know, 6 different First Nations communities, and one of them has a relationship with one of our groups. They're umbrellaed, as you know, and I think the lines of communication there, the sooner we can get those clarified, the better. It's really great in emergency to know those kinds of things. I'll stop and just give you a chance to respond to what I've asked so far.
Through the chair, thank you, Director. I just want to touch on one point of clarity as well, is when we chat about provincial regulation, we all often refer to the Office of the Fire Commissioner's minimum training standards. It not only touches in the OFC minimum training standards on how to conduct firefighting, primarily fire suppression, is it also teaches organizations how to act as a public-facing emergency services organization and or how to integrate into an emergency. And so that could be an emergency managed by any provincial agency. BC Wildfire Service would be a big one. So that's one of the keys. And in terms of the planning process, I would consider all organizations that are conducting firefighting or fire suppression or firefighting operations as a part of the planning process onto how to help them grow, to become more competent organizations, and for their firefighters to be safer. There's huge opportunities across the board in the SLRD, massive passionate volunteerism and strong leadership capabilities across the board. I would consider these rural remote folks such as Yalakum or Ashaloo Creek, Texas Creek, Tyotin, amazing organizations to leverage and help support. I would consider them all under what I'm terming as the governance and policy umbrella of the SLRD. So, and to clarify, in terms of acting as the authority having jurisdiction, it's not something an individual does. It's something that we will do as the SLRD. And apologies, I'm getting into some technical details, but the next stage in terms of planning is to then determine and chat and create space for conversation as to how to help them further. And Director Burst-Jones, the folks in your area won't be forgotten. And a part of my hope is that we'll have established, it's been mentioned in the conversation today, broader level conversations across the region, whether that's by committee or fire services associations. There's huge opportunity there. That's also part of the plan going forward. And I look forward to coming to this table at a future date soon to have a more strategic plan for you. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. Next on my list is Director Ring.
Thank you. Well, on where are you? Page 20, Area D recommendations, House Sound East. Number 6, establish mutual aid agreements in the corridor. Now, I know that's been on the radar for some time. My question is simply this: do we have one with Lions Bay? Do we, being the Britannia Beach part of that, do we have one with Lions Bay? Do we have one with Squamish?
Through the chair, thank you, Director. Currently, we do not have mutual aid established, and I just want to say thank you, appreciate your support in this regard up till now. The notion has been reviewed in principle with both organizations. The next steps will be creating more space for conversation in and around the intricacies of the partnership. And also, it's a part of the planning process going forward to make recommendations as to what the priorities are. If someone was to ask me, what is the priority in Area D? Currently, it would be the establishment of mutual aid.
So, can I just, is this right now, is it a staff to staff discussion? The reason I ask that is I know that there was political interference in Lions Bay in the past, and I'm just wondering if that's still the case, and if it is, if there's some time when we should get involved politically with them.
Through the chair, Director, the conversations, the answer is yes. Currently, the conversations are staff to staff. I've created a template based on some historical work that was done by a previous protective services director and a previous fire chief at the District of Squamish. And I built from that, I modernized it, and I shared it with both parties. And so currently, on both sides, that draft is being reviewed internally within their staff. And so really the next step will be to push for further conversation in that regard. And then I'd propose that I could report back to the board to say what the status of the situation is, because I do believe it's an outstanding item. And then I could articulate the thoughts, desires, concerns of both sides, if that would be appropriate.
Yeah, thank you very much. Another thing you mentioned, Ashby Creek just a while ago, and that for the information of the board, there's an example of a group of people. They're in the Upper Squamish Valley who had no access to any kind of fire protection because the District of Squamish couldn't. It's too far away for them to respond. And they decided that they wanted to have a fire department, and they, not a fire department, but a fire service. And so they have, over the years, spent a lot of their own money, and we've, the SLRD has supported them as well. So I just want to note that I want to continue to support them. I know that you're working with them, and I'd like to get to a point where we have some clarity about our responsibility in terms of continuing to finance anything that's happening there. And so, and then one final thing. Someone mentioned earlier an evacuation plan, talking about Squamish evacuation plan, and I know there is one. And in the event of a major fire, that evacuation might be south, coming down the highway, and that fire, depending on where it was, might also be threatening Britannia. So when that Squamish evacuation plan was developed, did we build into it what happens in Britannia? How do you amalgamate those streams of traffic if we're wanting Britannia to be evacuated as well?
Yeah, through the chair. I don't have all those details in front of me, but I know that we do have our community emergency plans, which speaks about those general kind of considerations. On our work plan, which has been shifted a little bit this year, is to develop a community and kind of region-wide evacuation plans. So we do have some baseline kind of studies that have been done. It's just getting the time to actually get them down on paper and put them out there.
Great, thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah, just some evidence of evacuation plans and how they work, especially like with us. We only have a single road going south, north, east, west, whatever. Jasper just got evacuated 25,000 people. And the line from Jasper to Valemont was 120 kilometers long, a traffic lineup of people trying to get out of there. So you can imagine what would happen here if Whistler was told to go north or south, or even Squamish goes south. And, you know, we've got the same situation. So you're gonna have a major traffic jam going in either way, right? So that's something we've got to really think about, how we execute that. I think that was a real shock to the province and the emergency people when they saw what happened coming out of Jasper, so. They told everybody to go west, and there's only a single lane road going west, so. It was quite interesting.
Okay. I don't have any more people on my list. I feel like yeah, please.
I just wanted to clarify or expand on an answer for Director Birch Jones in the table. There is an RFP that went out and we have responses and funded through the government to create really strong relationships and contacts with First Nations and all nations on the territory. So that work is in the process of being very quickly started, being led by Protective Services team.
Can I say one final?
You may.
Nothing, thank you very much. You know, fire is uppermost in people's minds right now. And I've been talking to a lot of people in my communities about wildfire specifically. And I just want to pass on to you that the comments I get about the fire service in our area are very, very positive, and I thank you for them.
Okay. Go ahead, Director Birch Jones.
Thanks, and that's good news, CAO Paul, just to have that outreach. We already have the wildfire roundtable going. I know Mark's attended and so forth, and so there's some participation from the SLRD, but there we do get some very good participation from our First Nations, meeting with our local fire people and just our brigades, try and send somebody. And so that's a forum that exists that could be built on. And there was one other thing we talked about at the EAD that I think might be worth mentioning again. It's just that there was some discussion in the report about hiring a contractor to do some of this work. And there was some pretty good feedback to say, no, let's have staff. We're going to establish relationships with these people. Let's maybe have a staff that's going to stay on. It's a lot of work. I mean, I could see Rob spending quite a bit of time just sort of trying to figure out the lay of the land and having a contractor do that and then be gone at the end of 6 months, I think wouldn't be as productive as having someone who actually was on staff who had that assignment. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Yeah. There's one more
Please.
point on that, sorry.
Absolutely.
Through the chair. Yeah, Director Bruce Jones, I think in terms of meeting with these groups, I know that our team has been, and myself have been prioritizing building those relationships to those groups, especially those groups. And I know I've spent a day up in the Yalcum and I'm hoping to get to Billion next week. And we're really trying to build that relationship so we can actually have kind of staff to kind of this community group relationship. So we can, you know what I mean? We can actually start positioning ourselves to be able to support them as well.
Excellent. Thank you.
I think this report is evidence of tremendous work on your teams on the last several months. It's been months, and that's been good time spent. And we're grateful for your work. And we look forward to the next part of this process when you come back and tell us all the good things that you're going to do with this report. So, thank you. With that, I think the resolution is to receive the information. Moved by Director Mack, seconded by Director Demare. All in favor? Are there any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you both. Verde Valley. is the director's report from Director Rainbow regarding the Sea to Sky Trail Paradise Valley washroom facility.
Hmm,
Can we start calling them washroom facilities? 'Cause there's more than just the toilet.
not in these.
They're not out there.
Well, I don't mind what you call them. Right now, what we're trying to do is provide an alternative to the bushes.
I like it.
Yeah. You've heard me talk about Paradise Valley a number of times. There are complex issues up there. One of them is the fact that the portion of the Skeeter Sky Trail sort of peters out at the north end of at the end of Paradise, the end of the community there. And people they want to get as close to that trail as they can before they start actually using it. So they'll drive up there and park, and some like to camp there, and there are no facilities whatsoever. So they use the bushes. And, it's not very nice for the neighborhood. So I'm not asking for money here at the moment because it is not a simple proposition to just go in and put a couple of toilets, a couple of washrooms in there. So having discussed it with our CAO, I've come up with this motion. That staff investigate the potential for the installation of 2 urine diversion toilets at the north end of Paradise Valley Road on Crown land, with considerations including but not limited to consultation with Squamish Nation, timelines, supply and installation, signage, ongoing operation and maintenance cost, together with associated staff time.
I'm gonna go to the CAO for a minute and I'll come to you.
Hi, thank you. Just a couple of points on the motion, and just clarifying some stuff that Director Rainbow and I spoke about. We specifically put Squamish Nation in here for consultation because as I understand historically, on a larger project proposed there for a more established area campground, something, Squamish Nation was opposed. This is much more smaller and very different. However, we want to make sure that there is consultation there and there's no insult where Squamish Nation feels like they're not being heard. So that was one thing, just want to make sure that's there. And the other thing I'd like to point out is, as much as this director's request is here, it's going to go on a work plan, and that work plan is going to have time impacts. And I would like to just speak to the group here today that sometimes when work's being done and this is being proposed, it doesn't mean it's going to happen immediately. It needs to go on a work plan, and remind everyone when emailing or calling me or talking to me saying, why isn't this done? I've been waiting for this to happen. Please remember that when these things go into a work plan, those things that go above do have a cascading effect with new projects that are being proposed by the director. Specifically directed at Director Rainbow, but something to keep in mind when we approve these things, it doesn't mean tomorrow we start this work. It means it's on a work plan.
Question, Director Richmond.
Another question. Just a heads up that our tourism branch of Tourism Pemberton applied for successfully 2 years in a row some funds for washrooms at a couple different trailheads, including some for a bunch of areas in the area, there are a bunch of places in the area.
I think 6, Mike.
Was it 6 of them?
Yeah, so far, yeah.
We've done a really good
Yeah,
job of it,
installed.
and I would just recommend you want to touch base with them and see how they access those funds and how they
That's
put it
great.
together.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I deliberately didn't get into asking for money yet, because if we're gonna go to the nation and involve them, we've already got a motion that we're gonna spend the money, that's kind of cart before the horse. So, that's
Exploratory. This is exploratory. And
It is.
this was also vetted through the area directors committee, and that's why it's here on the agenda today. So this is
Yeah.
our first view of this.
If I could just respond to what our CAO was saying. I understand that about the work plan, and this particular one, I think this has to be the way forward. It has to come through the board. We had a similar request down at Furry Creek at the beach recreation area. And the response of our then CAO was, why don't you do it yourselves? And why don't you, the local community association apply for the tenure and whatever we need. And it was relatively straightforward because it was a MOTI tenure we were looking for. And so that's what we did, and we managed to get something done in about 3 months. You know? I'm not expecting the same from staff, and if I thought that we could do the same here as we did at Furry Creek, then that's what I would be asking the board. But I don't think we can. I think this is a more complex situation, and that we have to involve. And it'll take time.
Director Mack, then Director Demare, and then I'm.
Yeah, just so Lillooet Nation were obviously fully supportive of Tourism Permanent putting these units in where they did put them. It's all within their traditional territory, and I mean, it's just, yeah, it's kind of a no-brainer. It's common sense. It's, yeah, anyways, it worked out very well. And the amount of money they got, I believe, was 225 or 250,000. And that was a grant through Destination BC.
Oh.
So, yeah.
Oh.
Director Demare.
Yeah, I'd just like to comment on this one. There definitely have to be the SLRD would have to get a tenure on that land because it's crown land. I don't think it's all public property or whatever it is, but I also want to share some information that regarding Vancouver Coastal Health, which the Sea to Sky District is in. This is an excerpt from the sewage systems page on that website, and it's very similar to what Northern Health has also, and is not in interior health. Any home or building not connected to a municipal or city sewage system needs a method to eliminate human waste. Some buildings, usually in rural settings with no running water, may use an outhouse or a privy. So that's in this area here. All buildings with indoor plumbing need a sewage disposal system that complies with the sewage system regulation. So it's just really interesting that in 2 of the 5 health authorities that you can have, if you don't have running water, you can have an outhouse basically.
Thank you.
That's all.
Okay. Okay,
And I put in the motion that on Crown land, BC Hydro have a right of way through there. So it might actually be on the Hydro right of way, and so it's still on Crown land. So I don't know who we ask or whatever, and that's part of the complicated factor here. So
You need permission, you don't need tenure, you need permission.
need permission, yeah.
okay. Would you like to move
I
it?
did move it, yeah. Oh, I will.
Seconder, Director Mack, comments? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
7 minutes until lunch. But I don't think we have time to do the next thing. I don't want to bounce all over the place. So let's take a little extra, but let's come back a little extra.
5-2, we'll come back at 5-2.
Come back at 5-2. I'll call a recess to this regular meeting. Be back at 12:55. Hi, Armand. Come back at 12:55.
Sorry, I'm late. Perfect timing, but we'll see you guys. When we're back.
Lunch is in the kitchen, Armin.
Good afternoon, everyone. We'll call this meeting back to order. And I do see we have Tyler Bannock. Welcome. Thank you for being here. And do you want to introduce your team to us, please?
For sure. Thanks. I think it's Chair Ford who's speaking, and the rest of the directors in the room. Tyler Bannock with CN's Public Affairs team. I look after the province of British Columbia. With me, I have Laura Hammer, who's responsible for the vegetation management manager across, I believe it's our network, at least Western Canada. Tyler Ward, our track supervisor, responsible for the Squamish sub that runs from North Vancouver to Lillooet and beyond. And we have Bree Ferguson, who's not on the agenda, a late addition, newest member of the CN team in the BC South, and is responsible for Indigenous relations. So thank you so much for having us.
Awesome, welcome. So you do have 10 minutes for your presentation and a few minutes for questions afterwards. So I'll give you the nod when it comes time. But I'm sure we have lots of questions for you. So go ahead. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah. And the presentations, I made it short just so that we did have time, more just of a CN 101. So I think we've gone over this piece already. So on the second slide, just a little bit about our CN network. We cover 3 coasts from Pacific, Atlantic down to the Gulf of Mexico. The main red line that kind of runs from let's just say Prince Rupert to Prince George, and then as well as Vancouver. And we go up through Kamloops, Jasper, Edmonton, Saskatoon. That's our main line out to Toronto, Montreal, and then down to New Orleans. 7 major ports. We're moving 180 different types of commodities, and 85% plus of that traffic originates from customers on the CN network. Next slide, please. A little bit more on kind of BC centric. We employ approximately 2,600 employees within the province, along the regional district where yourselves are located. We have hired 7 out of Squamish and 9 in Lillooet. Capital investments back into our network for 2023 was $404 million. And we'll see a lot of that investment in the Squamish-Lillooet subdivisions happening this October. You'll see at the bottom of the text from North Van to Lillooet mid-October, and then Lillooet into Williams Lake the latter half. And that's a lot of the work that Tyler and his team do with replacement, enhancement, and maintenance of key infrastructure. And that would include rail ties, rail itself, the rock, the ballast that support the track structure, and the rail ties if needed to be replaced. 2,800 miles operated within the province. Your rail line itself is former BC Rail, which we have taken over the lease on, and we have a few more of that BC Rail properties throughout the province, and then the majority of it's CN. Next page. I think that covers it off. So short and sweet, leaving time. I know the reason for the ask for CN to come speak today was on the vegetation piece. So I've got our team to help support some of those questions for you folks.
Thank you so much for being here, and thank you for that brief overview. That gives us an opportunity to get into it. So any questions from anyone? Director Mack, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Regarding, the spraying of the vegetation on both sides of the lines through the corridor, it seems to me that there must be a better way of managing those right-of-ways. And I understand that you have to do that, but by spraying it, that kills all the vegetation. And to me, that just makes that very fire prone. I know we don't have a lot of trains traveling through the corridor now, other than the Rocky Mountaineer or whatever, but it only takes one. And like I say, there just seems to me that there is a better way of managing that, whether it's mowing it, and I guess that is the way I'm thinking, because that way the green vegetation still is on the ground growing. So that makes that more fire resilient. Just wonder what you think of that.
For sure.
And what the reason for the spraying is.
Cost.
Sure.
Yeah,
So I can
I'll
follow.
to Laura
sorry.
on that one. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, the expert on that piece, and then Tyler, if there's anything that you can support Laura with the aftermath of some of that.
For sure. So I'll just make a quick correction. My position is titled Vegetation Manager, but I am only responsible for the herbicide component of the vegetation management program. The brush clearing component comes out of engineering and is up to each track supervisor within their subdivision. So just that's sort of how we separate it out. And I do also manage the herbicide spraying for our entire network, not just Western Canada. So for Canada and the US. So to quantify to answer your question, we like grass. Grass holds our ballast in place. The herbicide spraying, that when we say we're doing our herbicide spraying program, that's primarily the ballast, and that's where the track sits. So the track sits on a gravel bed, and that's what we have to have no vegetation on. We have to have no vegetation there for quite a lot of reasons, but we can't and the track. So when we're doing herbicide spraying, that's what we're spraying, is the ballast. And there's a reason that there's no vegetation that grows between the rails and the track. The way that we manage other vegetation in the rest of the right-of-way, so that ballast width is only 24 feet. Then there's the rest of the right-of-way, which extends to the edges of the property. Any vegetation in there that's sprayed is sprayed for invasive or noxious species that are regulated. If we deal with a municipality and we make arrangements with them, that's when we'll do that type of spraying in the rest of the right of way. But the bulk of our spray program is for the ballast program only, as well as in the yards, tracks, and track infrastructure. So anywhere where people are going to be walking, our engineer employees are going to be walking, and that's where the spraying occurs. So grass in the rest of the right of way is encouraged. We're not spraying from fence line to fence line because grass actually holds the ballast in place. So I always think it's amazing that the reason we have, being a vegetation nerd, the reason that we have something that stays in place for track is when we have vegetation holding it in place. So we want to keep grass in the rest of the right of way. It's just right on the ballast that we want. We don't want any vegetation.
Thank you.
Director Birch Jones, go ahead.
Thank you. And you go right through Northern Statlium territory here in the Lillooet area. I'm the Area B director, which surrounds the Lillooet district. And I'm assuming that you have some sort of an agreement there because they have a moratorium on the use of herbicides, but I'm sure you must have some sort of working agreement with them because I see that you're applying herbicides through the territory. I want to say that, of course, we are very much in favor of passenger rail service here from Lillooet down to Vancouver and up to the Williams Lake Prince George. I just have to say that because it's such an important method of transportation for us. When we lost the passenger rail service, we essentially lost public transport out of the community. But we do have the little shuttle running back and forth from the community of Shalath, Seton, and that is terrific. We very much support that. And I think those are my comments. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Director. Yeah, that the little shuttle is definitely unique to our network for sure, and it's a show of collaboration between the province of BC, CN, and Shalath. It's been good to see it evolve from a tiny bud car into a school bus, if you will, on wheels. So it's been good, and I think we'll continue with as those discussions go, and there's ways for the nation to build upon that. I think there's some discussions maybe on tourist aspects of, even making a money making proposition, but I'm not tied into that one as much as I was a couple of years ago, but happy to see that it's still running. In terms of passenger service, listen, we're totally in favor of passenger service. We do like it. Our ask, I think, as we move forward, or position would be that it has its own dedicated rail line. Maybe a little unique in your situation, being that there's not a lot of train traffic, but definitely across other parts of our network, considering our main line is where we'd like to see that have its own dedicated line, just to allow that freight movement and supply chain a seamless move. But lots of discussions being had between different organizations and our passenger services team as we speak on that. It's a good topic raised right across the province and federally to help connect communities and move people. So regarding the communication with the First Nation that you had mentioned and agreement, I know Laura and her team, that email that your district would have received would have also went out to the First Nations on our network to provide comment and feedback. I don't think I'm on a turn to say that just based on our regulatory body and who looks after us, some of those moratoriums you had mentioned may be superseded with what we're required to provide by Transport Canada. But Laura, I don't know if you have any comment on our relationship or comments back that we may have received from a particular First Nation.
I can't speak to that, but I can say that we do spray the right of way, and it is the ballast part that we do spray, and there isn't a no spray area and in there.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Just first comment, I still hear concerns or comments about what types of herbicides are being used and how they're being used. And so I think that is still a significant area of community interest and concern. My question though is in terms of some of the work you're talking about doing and when there's rail crossings and community impacts, how you, just a brief overview of how you connect with the community to minimize the impacts and make sure the community is aware of when road closures or those sorts of things are happening at crossings and so on. And to the degree there is sort of gaps in that communication or engagement, how we can best fill those gaps or address those issues.
For sure. I'll defer to Tyler to speak to some of that, but before I do, you know, him and I have a great relationship up and down the corridor. We work together if he's having trouble getting hold of a municipality, for instance, for permitting for road work, working with the public works departments, or just even communicating and forming that relationship. So if you're finding that there's a lack of communication in your area or need to build out the relationship with Tyler and myself, Bree, with the Indigenous piece, happy to connect offline. But Tyler, maybe to some of the work that you do and how that pre I guess date is finalized or formalized and how you go about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for allowing me to join today's meeting. One of the biggest things that I go through is I've taken over the territory just in the last year, and I've kind of grown to have a really good reputation with the district of West Vancouver and North Vancouver, kind of up my corridor to Darcy, Lillooet. Lots of times I do reach out to whoever's the one in charge. I like to at least give them as much notice as I can, but sometimes things are out of my hands and they have to get done within 24 hours or 12 hours, whatever the case is. But especially with some of the grass that's grown and the bushes that are grown in West Vancouver, it seems like as we cut down on the east side of the rail, by the time we get to the west side of the rail, the stuff's already regrown on the east side. So trying to stay on top of it's very tough. But I try to do my best to reach out to the districts, the MOTI, whoever it is around the crossings, just to make sure that everybody is aware, especially around like Ambleside, because there's so much foot traffic and just a lot of public in that area. I like to make sure that nobody's in the area because there could be flying debris or just to try to keep everybody safe. So if kind of piggybacking off what Tyler said, if there are some areas where there is a lack of communication, I do apologize, but I'm sure we can work towards on getting a better communication between myself and everybody else.
Tyler, what about traffic management plans? How does that work if there was a detour or a road closure required? How does that work on your end?
So I reach out to Metro Traffic. They deal with all my TMPs. They're really good, really fast, and usually within like 24 hours, if I absolutely need one, I'll have a traffic management plan designed up. I'll send it off to the corrective people. They'll review it, and then lots of times notices go out to each house within that area, and then as well as motherboards being put up to let people know that there's going to be a detour depending on what day, whether it's night shift, day shift. And then just making sure that we give everybody the respective notice that they need, because down in West Vancouver and North Vancouver, it's a super busy area and everybody has everyday life to go on about. So
And then do we use that same traffic management group up through this regional district that would go up, Whistler, Pemberton, Squamish-Lillooet areas?
yeah, so I've had to use, when I was in Lillooet, I tried to use locals just to have that collaboration with myself and trying to keep the business in the local communities. But both times I tried in Lillooet, there was only, because it's such a small community, there was only, I think, 2 traffic companies in Lillooet, and they're super busy dealing with the fires and stuff through Ashcroft and stuff. So I had to bring in a different company from out of town, but for the most part, I try to use the locals just to help leave business in the community and stuff.
Wonderful. Director, does that help answer your questions?
Yeah, thanks. I think I know you have a better idea of where to go to. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
And I have one last question from Director Demare. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. I'm just wondering if you could share the MSDS sheets for the herbicides with the SLRD staff that can forward them to the board, please.
Sure. The correct term is safety data sheet now. MSDS is the old term. So I can share the safety data sheets. However, I'll just preclude that safety data sheets are for the emergency response, transport, and storage of concentrate only, not for mixed product. They're not the legal document for pesticides, because pesticides are legislated differently than other dangerous goods. So the actual pesticide label provides you more information than what the safety data sheet is, but I'm happy to provide both, as well as they are available on our website.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Director Rainbow, last.
Quick comment for Tyler Bannock. Tony Rainbow from Furry Creek. I'm the director for Area D. We've communicated by email, and just wanted to say that the community is extremely happy with the crossing that you just improved at Oliver's Landing. It used to be like crossing the Alps. It's now like driving across the Netherlands. So just wanted to say thank you and to compliment you on the communication that we had about that.
Oh, wonderful. That's great news. And I'm sure Tyler Ward will be able to share that with his team out in the field. It's always nice to hear the positive feedback as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, well, thank you to all of you for being here with us today, and we look forward to seeing you again soon.
Okay. Thank you all. Be safe. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys.
See, I didn't get into whistles and things like that, did I?
Into what?
Whistle blowing.
Okay.
Take it as an hour.
Back to our agenda.
How's that work? Exactly.
8.1.
8.1. Electoral Area C zoning bylaw amendment for Wedgwood Estates, first reading. We have Kim, we have Alex Mackay. She coming on the screen? Sorry, okay, do you want to come to one of the presentations? No, I think that's, people want to come to the table and thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Director Nick? Go ahead.
I don't, excuse me, I don't have any questions. But I would like to move option 1, the preferred option.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to make sure that no one has any questions before we put the motion on the floor. Or if there are any. Just want to give everyone an opportunity to ask their questions. Okay, I don't see any questions. We do still have our two online people. Okay, well, we have Director Mack is making the motion and seconded by Director Rainbow. Comments? We're
No,
happy? Okay,
satisfied with staff's report.
fantastic. Thank you for the report. Okay. All questions, all in favor? Are there any opposed? 8.2, three readings and adoption of the SLRD Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy bylaw, and we have Kayla here. Who's gonna start?
I can start. Hello, I'm Gal Harris, Legislative Coordinator with the SLRD. This report is to bring a new bylaw forward regarding the freedom of information and protection of privacy. As part of this year's privacy program review, we identified an opportunity to update the existing freedom of information bylaw in regards to changes and amendments to the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act since the adoption of this bylaw in 1998. It should be noted that due to mostly organisational capacity, there wasn't the opportunity to review this bylaw previously. Take that. There are questions?
Thank you very much. Question? Go ahead.
I'm just curious, what we're seeing for volume of, FOI requests, and is that at a manageable level? Is it increasing, or where are we?
Since my time of managing the FOIs, it goes probably a little bit up and down seasonal. We've only had 3 this year. Last year we had maybe 7 or 8. I'd have to find the exact figure, but it's generally manageable for the most part. Yep.
3 would be, that's a tricky one because it can be 3 enormous ones, or it could be.
That
3
is actually
tiny
true.
ones.
Yes,
And so the
you're
amount
right.
of work isn't reflected in the number.
Yes, yeah,
necessarily.
it's
So
Yeah,
that's a difficult one for you to answer because obviously you're dealing with private issues. I do have a question from Director Birch Jones, then I'll continue. Go ahead.
Thank you. I just wanted to confirm that when it says designate the corporate officer, is that Miss Kristen Clark? Who,
No,
pardon me?
It's Angela Belsham is our.
Okay. Okay, thank you. That's perfect.
Director Mack?
I would like to move, I'm just getting to it now. Move the first app. Because I think we'd have to do it in 2
No,
parts.
we have to do it in 2 parts. I do want to make sure that no one else has questions
Okay.
first. Are there any other questions? Okay, now you make the motion that we see the first, second, and third reading.
I'll second it.
And seconded by Director Demare. Comments? Thank you for doing this work. It's long overdue. It's 1998. But certainly no commentary on, doesn't change a tremendous amount. With that, I'll call the question. All in favor? Are there any opposed? Motion carries. And will someone move the adoption, please?
Adoption.
Moved by Director Rainbow, seconded by Director Mack. All in favor? Are there any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
thank you.
And 9.1, CAO verbal update.
Hi, everyone. Hope you're well. I'm well, CEO, SLRD. Just a couple of updates to speak about. One of them is about the Capture Creek and Downton Lake Wildfire Recovery Community Engagement in the form of an online town hall. It took place on July 15th in the evening or late afternoon. 42 people were in attendance and 10 questions were asked. Also in attendance was the Ministry of Emergency Management, Ministry of Forests, and the representative from the insurance company of Canada. My other update is that there's a letter of support required for the Innovation Pathways program. So we're seeking funding through this program, specifically under its climate stream of funding. The objectives of the proposals are to provide predictions and risk ranking of source water bodies post-wildfire to inform public health protection. Tell the story of how water quality in Gun Lake has evolved since the wildfire event, and develop a framework for coordination among stakeholders, including provincial, local, and First Nation governments for monitoring and assessing the source drinking water. I think this is a very good opportunity and aim to build this foundation to address critical questions about climate risks to health, specifically looking into the correlation between soil leaching and water quality in Gun Lake. So we're requesting a letter of support for this application. If the board supports the application.
Can I make a comment on that?
Yeah.
I think the Gun Lake Ratepayers Association over many years has worked on tracking and taking water quality samples from the lake for a lot of years, so they've got a lot of data background. And I think part of this program will use some of that data as they move forward with it. And I definitely support it, and because it'll give the province some ideas of what to expect with water quality, especially drinking water quality, for other lakes in the region or rivers, wherever people are using surface water for their drinking water. So I fully support it.
Any other comments? Go ahead.
Yeah, just I wasn't able to attend the live. You've seen the first half or 3/4 of the town hall, and I guess what struck me is the amount of information and support sort of beyond what I would have expected from regional district being provided, and the need for it, and the community interest in thinking about like the insurance information and so on. And it just reinforced for me, and it came up in reading through the fire services review too, just the need, and we've talked about it before, but to really, I think, understand and decide what our role is in short and long-term emergency response. It seems like there is a huge demand and a huge void that we are filling. It's maybe not in general, or thus far hasn't been thought of as our role, but there's a lot of need and a lot to do, and I think it's important that we wrap our heads around and commit and clarify exactly what level we're doing, and then figure out how we're gonna fund whatever we decide, because it's just, yeah, I really wanna thank staff for running what seemed to be an excellent, really informative, and really needed town hall, and sort of wish the province was doing that a little more. And you know, it's good that we are able to step in, but if we, you know, as more of these emergencies happen, I think we really have to wrap our heads around how can we do this in a sustainable way if this is, if we are gonna accept this responsibility.
Okay. Motion to write the letter.
So I'll make a motion to write a letter for the funding.
Okay.
As per the CEO Paul.
Okay, seconder. Director French, comments? All in favor? Are there any opposed? Motion carries.
I'd just like to make a comment to Chris's Pettingill's to his comment. It's true, it is, this recovery has been really, really tough. And we've got the SLRD involved. It took some coaxing to get the ministry to have that session on the hazard assessments they did, but we had those two. And last night, with the salvage logging, that the ministry has approved all these, you know, moving forward to do all the salvage logging. You know, I've had to facilitate community meetings. We had two previously, one for the Gun Lake area and one for the Gun Creek and Tarleton Lake areas. And last night we had another one on the progress and and issues and concerns that the public has with the salvage logging that's gonna happen now. The next set is right above the burn area on Gun Lake Road West, above all those properties. So you're correct. We do need, moving forward as a regional district, to come up with a really comprehensive plan on how we're gonna communicate with the public that is involved in these major disasters, you wanna call
Okay,
them. Yeah, that's all.
thank you. Is that it for your?
One more thing I want to note is that last year we had under 75 properties undergoing fire smart assessments in preparation. And we have over 200 now. We're at, as of yesterday, we're at 213.
Fantastic.
So you can put on that hat there, Tony, and be proud.
And where are they mostly?
They're actually all across the regional
Okay.
district. It's
Great.
impressive. It was supported many of the area directors.
Awesome.
Following that, I was just talking to Mark, I identified a couple of SLRD properties in Ferry Creek that need to be fire smarted. And as a result, the board has now taken a look at how much property we own. It's a considerable amount. And the current funding doesn't cover government-owned land.
Right.
So
Yeah.
we have to find other ways of dealing with it. The two lots in Ferry Creek. I'll be coming to EAD to get some support for them. That's not a problem. But some of the rest of it, we've got. I think Mark's got something in mind, but we need the funding to support it.
Okay. Director Birch Jones, I saw your hand and now it's disappeared. Are you?
I just wanted to follow up on what CAO Paul said, but then ask for a breakdown of what, where, because I think we've done very well in B, but I could certainly just ask Mode that question. And, but it would have been good to know that maybe next time.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah, feel free to email myself and the director overseeing that division of mode instead of going directly to staff, and we will get that information. And be sure to share it with everyone broadly.
Great, thank you. Okay, motion to receive the CAO verbal update, please. Moved by Director Crompton, seconded by Director Rainbow. All in favor? Are there any opposed? Motion carries. Next on the list is 9.2, an information report regarding quarterly development applications report. And we have Director Needham here. Hello. The report is in your package. Does anyone have any questions? Go ahead, Director Demare.
Yeah, calendar resources, there were two items there. One was a TUP and the other one was a riparian zone. And they've been canceled. I'm just wondering why they've been canceled.
I think the applicant requested a cancellation. I'm not certain about that specific one. Usually, we don't just cancel them, it's usually at the request of an applicant.
Well, it's kind of, I just wondered, you bring a report or email me or whatever, it just seems kind of odd, because there's such a push at the time to make those two things happen.
Yeah, I can look into that.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Go ahead.
First item there, Director Needham, Tiger Bay property. We requested more information from Moti, or they requested more from us. Are we still waiting to hear back from them? What, can you say what the information was they needed, or?
They wanted to, through the chair, they wanted to look at the draft development agreement that was sent to them. Probably 6 weeks ago, so it's now been over 7 months. We've been waiting. And we've followed up with them many times.
Questions?
There's a large number that sit for a long time, and is that the majority of? Just interested in how long people sit with their applications at these stages. Are they doing work, or are they just holding the zoning that they have, or the place in the process that they're at to bring back when it fits their budget? Like, is this interest rate related? Do you know why these things stall? Is there any method to why?
Through the chair, yeah, it really varies.
So I understand, I think with land development agreements and so on, you can put expiry dates sometimes. Is there, in terms of applications, value or an ability to put in an expiry date?
Yes, we have a development procedures bylaw. And so we can close a file if it's been inactive for a year, but activity can include a phone call to a staff member, or a letter or something like that. So if they just go away for more than a year, we can just close the file.
Someone like to make a motion to receive the report, please? Moved by Director French, second by Director Demare. Any further comments? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Are there any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Director Needham. 9.3, development variance permit delegation. Direction request. We have Anna joining us.
Thought Vivian might have something to say, but if not, fine.
Okay, good afternoon, Ms. Katerniak. Thank you for being here. We're at 9.3, and I'll turn the floor over to you.
Hi, everyone. Planner analyst here with the SLRD. So this report here is brought forward as an effort to streamline our development approval process. Recent legislative changes made it possible to delegate minor development variance permits to staff. There is no provided definition of what would constitute a minor variance, so it is something that each local government can develop or determine individually. The Local Government Act does speak to a definition of minor development variance permits in the context of adjudication by a board of variance. So minor in the context of a board of variance decision is that the variance does not result in inappropriate development of the site. It does not adversely affect the natural environment, does not substantially affect the use and enjoyment of adjacent land. It would not vary permitted uses and densities. It doesn't defeat the intent of the zoning bylaw, and it doesn't vary the application in bylaw in relation to residential rental tenure. So we're proposing to utilize the same condition to define minor variances, as well as additional conditions, and not the requested variance would pertain to height or setback and be 50% or less of what is required. With regard to parking variance, if the proposal is a 20% change in what is required, such variances are also proposed to be considered minor and delegated to staff. Any variances that seek to bring forward a bylaw infraction into compliance, that would be for board approval. Anything in excess of 50% of what is required is also going to be for board approval. Yeah, so any questions so far?
Go ahead.
Just, I guess one, is the OCP for the area the main document that would guide staff on whether or not the variance is appropriate?
The guidance that we are proposing is the definition of minor in the context of a board of variance decision. So some of the things that I mentioned before, we would look at whether it would result in inappropriate development of the site or affect the natural environment or affect the use and enjoyment of adjacent lands. So not so much the OCP, as well as we would look at how much of a variance is being requested. Is it more than 50% of what is required or less?
Is there a way to include consideration of what an OCP says in terms of, in my mind, an OCP does give guidance of that would be a place where you would test if a variance made sense, I think to some degree, or.
Through the chair, I'll just speak to that. So basically it would be the zoning bylaw. The OCP doesn't get into sort of that level of nitty gritty in terms of land use. It would be like if there's a 6 meter setback that's required, anything over 3 meters requested for a variance would be something that we would bring to the electoral area directors and the board. Anything less, that would be delegated to myself. Similar to what we do for wildfire development permits, environmental development permits, and such. Those, I have a delegated authority for those kinds of development permits.
Okay, and I guess maybe my concern with this is in changing use, which isn't minor, so maybe it's a non-issue. Just sort of thinking aloud. The other piece, is there a way, because in my mind, a 6 centimeter versus a 12 centimeter setback, it's 50%, that's not a big deal. But 60 meters versus 120 meters, still 50%, but it's all of a sudden a big deal. Is there a way that you would propose we sort of address that or could address that? Like, because for me, 50%, it's more than just the percentage, it's.
You'd be dealing with an enormous property to have.
Right, yeah, but that.
Variance, so it would be.
That's the sort of
I hear
example.
where you're coming from, but.
That wouldn't be mine.
It would.
Yeah, through the chair, we don't really have any setbacks that are greater than about 7.6 meters. There might be, I can't think of anything. It's about 25 feet. So, yeah, we don't really have setbacks larger than that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, this is really just a streamlining process of not every little thing needs to be held up, coming to the board and waiting for the next board meeting. Director Birch Jones, you're next.
Thank you. This looks pretty reasonable, and certainly when some of those requests to look at variance permits have come to the board in all their detail, and I've been scrolling through going, why are we even looking at this? However, it's also been my experience when we get to the board, there's quite a bit of debate about them. And so they're not all as simple as this sort of implies. I'm wondering, maybe I was thinking, well, perhaps the ones that are denied, I'd be interested in and why they were denied. And then I just thought, maybe we should just try it for a year and see the ones that were approved, the ones that were denied, and the rationale of staff, and sort of then I would have a better comfort level with approving this as a sort of routine way of doing business. It's just my suggestion.
Yeah, and through the chair, we do have bylaw 1301, which is our development approvals bylaw. It does allow an applicant a means of appeal. So if they disagree with my determination, they can appeal to the board to reconsider. I don't believe that's happened yet, but it is an option for people.
I'll come back to you. Director Rainbow, go ahead.
Yeah, we're not being asked right now to approve that staff be given this authority. We're being asked to direct staff to bring us back a bylaw. So, and then we can debate whether we're going to approve them. So I'd like to see that bylaw. I would hope that it would include some sort of definition of what constitutes minor. And then if we're happy with what is described as a minor variation, I'm all in favor of giving staff that authority. I agree with what Director Birch-Jones just said. Sometimes we've had things come to us that have required a staff report where somebody has wanted a variance of 2 or 3 feet in an area which is it doesn't, whether it's 2 feet or 10 feet or 20 feet, it wouldn't make any difference. And I think staff, I've had calls. Did I know a particular property? What was, because sometimes staff are not necessarily going to know every property, and I think if staff are not sure about a situation, I have trust that they will make sure and do whatever they need to do to find out whether they are comfortable granting the variance. So, and the net result of having something like this in place is we provide better service to our constituents, we shave off some staff time, and it's a win-win situation. So if we're ready, I'll move that, make
We're
that
not,
motion.
I have 3 people on my list. And again, we are just discussing whether or not we're asking staff to come back with the bylaw, not the content of the bylaw at this time. We can make suggestions, but I don't think we need to get into the weeds too much because we're gonna have this conversation all day. So go ahead.
Okay, so the new legislation does not provide guidance to local governments as to what is minor, so therefore it is the discretion of the board. So I appreciate the list thus far. The minor variance primarily rests as a judgment call. And I worry about, like, I know that some of them are minor that are coming and that might alleviate the workload. But I think it also adds to the responsibility of Ms. Needham and her staff. And I'm not so sure that's actually a good idea. I agree with Director Birch-Jones that sometimes at this table, we go around about something and often our perspective is different in urban Squamish to rural Goldbridge, you know, and our decisions are different. And I don't think that, I think I remember one in particular that wasn't a unanimous decision. And I, again, worry about putting those things on staff. So, you know, I look forward to the report. But yeah.
Thank you. Director Mack?
No, Mayor Hoppel just said it all. Thank you.
Okay. And Director Herford, please.
Thank you. I'm just reflecting that mine is maybe a bit more of a comment, so I'll move option 1 if the timing's okay for that, and I'll speak to it.
Sure. Seconder, Director Rainbow. Go ahead, Director Herford.
Yeah, thank you. I think this is a entirely appropriate. We're not discussing that we're directing staff to approve every variance that comes to them. It's just that they're going to tackle the minor ones. And I think that this is an important piece to, be mindful of the capacity of our meeting time as well, so that we are getting the things that are important and require our scrutiny. So I think this is an important step. And as with anything, the devil's in the details. So I look forward to that more detailed discussion around the nuts and bolts of this, but it's absolutely a worthwhile endeavor and I'm happy to support. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Pettengill and Director Rainbow.
Yeah, also happy to support. Notwithstanding my questions, I think we should be trying to delegate as much of this sort of thing as we can. Just requires good policy in place. And I think the discussion I heard so far on our definition of minor, making sure that's clear, will help get us there. And I think to Director Birch-Jones's comment, I would hope to see as part of the discussion next time something like an annual report just summarizing the variances granted, not to reevaluate them, but just to be aware of, get some comfort and is our policy sufficient and we're comfortable with that. And after a year or two, we may not need that or want it anymore, but just to sort of understand the impact in the first year or two would be helpful, I think.
Thank you. Director Rainbow?
Just to underline what Director Needham said, that, a decision is made, it's communicated with the resident. If they don't like it, they have the option of coming to the board. So it's not as though we're just aggregating our responsibility. We're delegating something. We have that safety thing in there if there is dissension.
Awesome. Okay, the motion has been moved and seconded. I think we've heard from everybody. I'll call the question. All in favor? Are there any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Director Needham. Moving on to 9.4
Thank you,
requests.
Anna.
Pardon me.
Thank you, Anna.
And thank you, Anna. Shipping containers in electoral area, a public hearing waiver. This is not about whether or not we have shipping containers. This is about whether or not we waive the public hearing as is allowed for in our procedures. So would someone go ahead, questions? I'm going with questions first.
Yeah, just wanted to check it, as this is worded, what's going to public hearing. It wasn't clear if the expectation is that anyone who makes use of this now, they have to remove or they would be grandfathered in. I'm just not sure how grandfathering might work with the current wording. And
through the chair, I can speak to this. This is really to do with the 55 affected properties. And it would allow them to use shipping containers for a period of time to store construction goods, etc.
so, but just to be clear, and I wasn't entirely sure from the wording, if they take advantage of this now in this window that allows, if they sort of put one in during this window, can they then forever keep it? Or I understand there is an end date on the window, but if you get it in before the window, can you keep it forever or you have to remove it as well?
Yeah, according to our legal counsel, that setting the date for the period of time it's allowed is a reasonable approach, and I don't think it would require, wouldn't trigger a grandfathering provision.
In your experience, how would you enforce removal?
Through our standard bylaw enforcement channels.
Would that be effective in this circumstance if we had a large number of them?
Well, that's a really good question. You know, it depends on the level of bylaw enforcement that the board chooses.
Okay.
Letters are less effective than letters from lawyers.
Yeah.
And legal injunctions are more effective than letters from lawyers, so. Depends on where we want to take it.
Okay, thanks.
Director Mack.
Yeah, I think that I'm gonna bring a director's report forward at some point about changing the legality of having shipping containers and in the elected areas. Because I'm sure, as everybody knows, they're out there. And I think that they are an excellent way of having protective storage on your property. It's a cheap way of doing it. They're fireproof, blah, blah, blah. And it's just to say that the person can build a shop or a garage or whatever, which would cost thousands of dollars. This is just a smart way of doing things, and it's happening all over, not only our jurisdiction, but everybody's jurisdiction. So I'll bring a report forward at some point, making that recommendation that we change our bylaws
Let's
to allow that.
bring that forward to
EAD.
no, it's a zoning issue, so I think it would probably come to an agenda board planner, which we can take offline. Director Crompton.
No, thanks, sorry.
Okay, so the motion is to direct staff. Oh, sorry, Director Birch Jones, do you have a question?
No, I was just gonna move option 1 to waive the public hearing.
Okay, to waive the public hearing. Moved by Director Birch Jones, seconded by Director Demare. All in favor? Are there any opposed? Motion carries.
Comment, please.
Sure, yep.
Yeah, I fully support what Director Mack is suggesting, and I'll work collaboratively with him to create that director report.
That's. Okay, it is 2:00 almost, so we're taking a 5-minute stretch. Come back at 2:00. It's 1:55, so come back at 2:00. Thank you, everyone. We're back. We are now at 9.5. Yay, it's almost here, the RGS review. Exciting. Turning it over to you.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Claire Dewar. I'm a senior planner here at the Squamish-Lillooet Regional District. I'd like to give a really high-level overview of the SLRD RGS Review 2024 Minor Amendment Initiation Request for Decision Report, and then I'm happy to take any questions that the board members have. So as per the Local Government Act, the SLRD is required to consider a review of the RGS in 2024. The Local Government Act and the SLRD RGS bylaw include a minor amendment criteria and process. The SLRD board referred the RGS review consideration and proposed policy update areas to the RGS steering committee for input as to whether the proposed amendment would be considered a major or a minor amendment. The RGS steering committee was in general agreement with the scope of the RGS 2024 review and recommended that the proposed policy updates be considered as per the minor amendment process. So the proposed policy updates include revisions to strategic directions under Goal 3, affordable housing, and Goal 11, climate action, as well as indicators where necessary to reflect these policy updates. The proposed policy updates strengthen alignment and opportunities for regional collaboration, advocacy, and action around Goal 3 and Goal 11, reflecting the board direction to update the greenhouse gas targets, input received from the Regional Affordable Housing Forum, which was in April 2024, as well as best practices from existing member municipality OCP and climate action plans. So the subject staff report recommends that the RGS review 2024 be scoped to address policy updates to Goal 3, Goal 11, and indicators, that the RGS review 2024 proceed as a minor amendment as per the minor amendment process outlined in the SLRD RGS, and that the RGS review be formally initiated with notice provided to affected local governments, which include member municipalities and adjacent regional districts. And I'll leave it at that. I'm happy to take any questions that the board may have.
Thank you very much. Questions? Go ahead.
In general, I'm supportive with everything in the recommendations. There's a few language things in some specific amendments, and will there be an opportunity for some board feedback or discussion, or is this this is the language we would go forward with?
Thank you. So through the chair, this is very much draft language, and it's so that we can initiate that 30-day notice to affected local governments around, like, this is the proposed scope. This is, potentially this minor amendment process, and then we would be coming back to the board. Assuming we do go the direction of a minor amendment process, then you would have a draft bylaw, first reading opportunity for the board to, provide input at that first reading, or potentially in advance, as part of that 30-day process too. There's kind of some different ways we could look at that.
Yes, thank you. Go ahead.
Thanks for the report. Were there specific decisions made here or trends that you're seeing that drew you to climate action and housing as the pieces that you were going to lead with?
Thank you. So through the chair, one of the directions that seemed to come forward from the Regional Affordable Housing Forum was around regional approaches to affordable housing. And so that felt like a good fit to roll that input into the RGS review, and the timing was really well synced as well, in that we received that input in April 2024. And now we're getting into considering the review. So that kind of scoping work. And then the other piece around climate action was specific to the previous board direction around updating our greenhouse gas emissions targets. That we have an outstanding board resolution, and that felt like, from staff's perspective, an opportunity to work with our member municipalities to identify any other gaps within that goal chapter in particular, and also reflecting the board's desire to really get into some prioritization and sort of implementation work on climate action sort of coming out of this. And so that was the framing of the scope around those two goals, recognizing our desire to get into some of that prioritization and implementation work around affordable housing and climate action, and then just our staff capacities, not wanting this to be a full-blown over review of the RGS.
What is the pivot there, like that turns it over into a major?
So we have that criteria.
Yeah.
And so it, I mean, we can look at what the criteria says in particular. I think staff's perspective, often if we see like a development application that's coming forward, that's a changing of a land use, that would likely be considered more on that major side, depending on the nature and the scope and whatnot. And then, you know, the degree to which the policy changes are aligned with existing OCPs. Yeah, and then just there's certain triggers that no matter what kind of trigger a major review.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Through the chair, under Appendix B, 11.2, it says the member municipalities will adopt regional context statements that identify how local land use, transportation, and solid waste policies will contribute. So when it talks about transportation, how do those policies conform to a place like Lillooet? Or is there wording that it can, that we can have regional contact statements that would maybe apply to Pemberton and Whistler and Squamish, but not to Lillooet? Because obviously a transportation like that's not gonna happen.
Yeah, no, so thank you through the chair. Part of the intention with the change in or the breaking out of the SLRD will versus the member municipalities will is recognizing that the SLRD OCPs must be aligned with the RGS, and then the member municipalities show their alignment through their regional context statements. And there's lots of ways that that's done, and generally it's looking at the existing OCP policies and showing the alignment, and those regional context statements come to the board, and there's an opportunity for staff and the board to just confirm that alignment piece. We did hear from District of Lillooet staff around the climate action sort of policy review, and there was you know, some of the pieces that came forward were actually around transportation, whether it was active transportation. So I think there is still opportunity for work in that space. It will look different depending on which community that's coming forward. And so I think the idea is that we put in like land use, transportation, solid waste, because that's typically where we see the most impact, but there's different ways that you could meet that context statement requirement.
And just to clarify and make sure I don't miss an opportunity, in terms of, you know, the board may have a chance during first reading to provide some additional thoughts, or I think I heard ahead of time we could provide feedback. I want to make sure that's probably in the context of a committee of the whole or something. That wasn't a request for us to all email you right now with thoughts. Is that accurate?
That is through the chair, there could be a couple different directions that we go with this. If the board chooses to initiate the review as a minor amendment, staff could, send out the letters to all the affected local governments, say, hey, you got 30 days. This is kind of like the scope. This is some of the draft policies that we're looking at. And then staff could come back to the board in more of a workshop format to try and get at some of those language pieces that are being proposed in that goal 3 and goal 11. Or alternatively, the board, we could just come back to the board with draft bylaws. So those are probably a couple options to address that need.
But
Move the first. Yeah.
Vivian's got her hand up.
Oh, Director Birch Jones, question? Are you seconding?
No, actually, I had my hand up for a little while. I don't think this is really, thank you. It's nice to see you, Ms. Dewar. I know I've asked this before. When I started, I certainly remember going over this table with Linda Flynn, where there was a measurement of GHG with the SLRD, and it was a flawed document, but it was pretty good. I mean, at least it was better than nothing. Was that a provincial program that was stopped? And so we stopped doing that? Or because I just sort of think a lot of the things that I've done in I've done a lot of energy efficiency, like solar panels on the rec center, for example, that kind of thing, where I think, whoa, that would be some good credit. I'd like to have more of a conversation about that aspect, but maybe just answer that question about that annual reporting that we were doing. Was that just something that was required by the province that was stopped, or what happened with that?
Yeah, thank you. So through the chair, I believe that program, it was typically finance that was responding to that program, but I believe that has shifted, and our reporting at that provincial level is now through the local government climate action program and plan, and it's still being led, and planning is supporting by the finance department. And I'm not sure if that comes to the board. I'm not entirely clear on that process, but we do have, as part of the regional growth strategy, we do have indicator monitoring, and there are greenhouse gas emissions that are tracked as part of that. And it's the intention that following this review that we'll be getting into that indicator monitoring. And to that end, the community energy and emissions inventory reports are now kind of been reenacted. So that's really helpful when we want to be doing that indicator monitoring, because it has been a gap, especially at that regional district level, just reporting on emissions in general.
So I'm super interested in that, and I think that would be part of the next workshop or the next draft of the bylaw. Do I get that right? Is that the time to have that conversation?
Yeah, so through the chair, I see Director LaFrance is on the phone, and she might be able to speak to the reporting requirements under the LGCAP program and the timing of that. I don't see, what I do see as part of the RGS review is updating our GHG emissions targets. The actual reporting on those emissions wouldn't come until after this process is complete, and we typically bring on a consultant to support that work.
Is that helpful to you, Director Birch Jones?
Well, I saw Ms. LaFrance unmuted, and I thought she was going to add something.
Yeah, I can, through the chair, I'll just, on the LGCAP spreadsheet that you're thinking about, Vivian, it was the old LGCAP program, and it's updated now where we fall under the category of the requirement to do that GHG emissions any longer. You have to be a local government of over 10,000 population. So we've been relieved of that requirement since the new LGCAP program. We might still pick it up in the future when capacity allows, just because it is good to know.
Got it. Thank you. Are we going to have to factor in wood fiber LNG in our next calculation?
Okay, so I do have a mover. I don't have anyone to second it. Director Richmond, comments? Go ahead.
We're well aligned. Last night at council, we received a couple of reports that really pointed to investments in climate action that I think are gonna be very significant, in that focus that you have on the single occupant vehicle and a desire to encourage the adoption of zero emission vehicles, I think is exciting and important. We talked last night about the fact that we will need 300 plus phase 2 chargers in our day lots by 2030 to be able to support the transition through over 380 was the number. And so I think that the timing's perfect for including this work in the RGS, because our communities are gonna have to make dramatic shifts if we're actually going to take this seriously, because the uptake of electric vehicles is on track as far as purchasing is concerned, and we're going to need to shift the way we do things as local government. So I'm looking forward to that conversation happening through the RGS, and yeah, the timing's good, so. Thank you for the report.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's an exciting time. I'm excited to see where we go with this. I think looking around the province, I see our area as having a leadership role, and it's an important and exciting place to be in. So looking forward to this.
Thank you. Okay, so with that, I look forward to the next phase. And I would call the question. All in favor? Is there any opposed? Motion carried.
Next two that's.
Oh yeah, and then the next two that's can be together. Moved by Director Rainbow, second by Director Crompton. Further comments? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. 9.6. This is a request for decision regarding areas A through D heritage services funding proposal. Director LaFrance. Director Birch Jones. Okay, back to Director LaFrance.
Thank you. So I'll just quickly go over this report. The board recently approved the 4 heritage services for each EA electoral area. And so now looking at pretty much just preempting the budget discussion, trying to find out how these implementation projects that the planning staff have planned for these services will work with taxation. So I just have 3 scenarios for the board, and I did recommend the scenario 1, which is using a uniform tax rate for each of the 4 services. And so I basically built a budget based on what the planning staff had forwarded to me. Certain items will have to be divided equally, which is assets or this admin fee, but the other items we can divide based on a uniform tax rate. So each area will have the same residential tax rate. It won't be perfect, but it'll be very close, just because each area's tax rate will fluctuate between the completed roll and the revised roll, and we don't receive the revised roll in time to add it into our budget. But the revised roll is what is taxed. So there will be slight differences, but it'll be very close to a uniform tax rate. The easiest method is just dividing all of the expenses equally between the 4 electoral area services, but this does cause a big change, a big fluctuation with the residential tax rate. And so using that second option, where there's divided equally, the residential tax rate for 2025 would be spread between $4.84 and $41.29. So you get the idea that you understand the issue there. So just looking to the board for any questions on this that I can answer.
Great, thank you. Question? Director Birch Jones, I'll come back to you, Director Gill. Go ahead, Director Birch Jones.
Thank you. I didn't think this would come up this quickly, but I have spent some time like looking through, I don't know if you can read this, Lillooet Fraser Heritage Resource Study, and racking my brain to identify potential heritage sites that we would identify for conservation and funding. And in Area B, I think I would have to request that an inventory be done before any taxation was applied, because I can't find a site that isn't burnt down on the reserve, fraught with controversy. I just don't quite see this as a fit in B. I was going to ask, and so my motion is to defer this to the EAD for some more discussion. I know that pushes it to September, but that's what I'd like to propose. Or to remove Area B from the Heritage Services funding proposal.
Okay, hold that thought.
That's my note, was passing here.
I'll second her motion to defer.
We're just conferring if that can be deferred to the EAD or if it has to be deferred to the next board meeting.
Can't they discuss this? They could.
We come back as a recommendation, can't we?
Sure, yeah, okay. Okay, so we have a motion to defer to the September EAD committee for discussion. And I have it seconded by Director Crompton. I'll go to Director Herford, and then I've got other speakers in the room.
Yeah, thank you. I was just wondering about Director Birch Jones's comments there made me think about, isn't scoping heritage assets wouldn't that be part of this sort of end project? So I have a hard time presupposing that, but I just want to make sure that I have that correct. I don't know if it's the appropriate time to get that answer. I'm supportive of the deferral for more conversation, but I'd like to have clarity on this point.
Director LaFrance, do you have something to?
Well, just based on the information I have in the report, there's just the two initial projects, developing a strategic plan and then developing a heritage inventory. So that's why they do affect all areas. We're going to be looking at all areas. So that's why I was looking at how to tax for this evenly between all areas. So, yeah.
Director Pettengill, go ahead.
Yeah, that may be Director LaFrance's last comment may have mostly answered my question, but I was trying to wrap my head around, this seemed like a departure in direction where normally each electoral area would, sort of look at the level of funding it wanted and which assets it felt was important and so on. But understanding initially this is for some common base work, I think this does make a lot more sense. Be interesting to understand or have clarity when this comes back about what happens when we're identifying different projects in different areas and how that funding model shifts, and is that the plan that it would shift at that point? And but supportive of this going for a little more discussion if that's necessary.
I saw a hand over here, but I didn't support it. Therefore, I think also we just debated deferral, which we're not supposed to do. You didn't need a bigger wag of sharing.
Yeah.
I will call the question. All in favor? Are there any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. And thank you to both of you for being here today. Yeah. All right. 9.7 Community Works Fund Agreement.
Thanks, everyone. So this report is a request to sign the newly received Community Works Fund Agreement. The program has been renewed for another 10 years, and this agreement will be in effect from 2024 till 2034. There hasn't been any major changes to the structure of this program. All funding categories that were in the previous agreement have been carried forward. However, there have been a few new categories that have been added and expanded. The disaster mitigation category has been renamed and expanded to include more projects. Fire trucks are now eligible as standalone projects. Feasibility studies and detailed design projects are now eligible and do not require a future project to go forward to be eligible. And lastly, housing assessments and planning are also eligible. We are receiving just over 380,000 in 2024, and we'll have 5 years to spend funds after they are received. And then one other point we just want to raise, I know Suzanne touched on this earlier in the meeting, that there's some new wording around third-party contributions and projects. Generally, shifting the focus of the program to be internal projects as the priority. So before an external project can be approved, board must identify that the project has a regional or municipal priority with long-term capital investment plan. The board must ensure that they have not prioritized a third-party project over a local government-owned priority project. And the project must be supported by asset management funding. And then there's also additional reporting requirements around those third-party projects.
And there's just the one other criteria to, you missed the last one on the final page. It's just the project meets, so any project that receives more than 25,000, and it's a third party, has to include these items: population directly served by the project, First Nation population served, output metric, and outcome metric. So there's these new metrics that we have to apply for each community work fund based on the 3 community works funds requirements, which are so there's new output and outcomes indicators that we have to develop for each project. Still a little fuzzy on how that's going to happen for some of these infrastructure projects. Some of it might just be serving more people. That's the outcome metric. Sorry. I just wanted to add that.
Thank you.
Yeah, nice. That's all I have, so I'll open it up for any questions on this program or agreement.
Questions? Go ahead, Director Mack.
Just looking forward to receiving the money over the next 10 years.
Second that motion.
Amazing. So,
Not enough.
When I read it, and I know I asked you this before, Colin, that do you think that sort of the new rules and categories go into place once this is signed off in August? And it, to me, reads like it does. I hope so.
I don't think we're quite clear on that, so
Not quite there yet.
to reach out to CWF and see like where resolutions that were passed before receiving this agreement, how that kind of falls in line with these new rules. So I can follow up with you, especially regarding the recent resolutions that were passed to third party.
Thanks. Thank you very much. This is great.
You record the first and second? Okay. Call the question, all in favor? Are there any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. And 9.8, an information report from you.
Yeah, this is a pretty short report. It was just a request earlier to provide the total funding that's been allocated to the Gun Lake wildfire recovery. And so far to date, as of July 16th, we had reimbursed property owners for $45,000, and there's roughly 49,000 remaining between the resolutions to allocate Area B or Area A PILT funds and Area B select funds. And I'm happy to answer any other questions.
Yeah, I'm just wondering with the fire loss group, since we give them newsletters on a regular basis through the emails, to ask the question, how many more will be using that funding? So we get an idea how many, because you only got 29 out of the 56 so far. And I don't know what the delay is or the situation, but it'd be good to get an idea and ask that question of them, you know. Are they gonna be using that funding? Because if we know that they're not gonna use it, or a portion of them are gonna use it. And we can, there's lots of other recovery initiatives that could be, this funding could be used for.
Yeah, I'm not directly involved in that working group, but I can connect with them and maybe get that into the next newsletter, because I think it would be helpful for me too to have that information and know whether or not we're gonna be using the remaining funds.
Thank you for the report.
Yeah, no problem, thank you.
Does this report include staff time?
It does not, that's just direct reimbursement for the, yeah.
And then to Director Demers' point, if we've had 29 out of 56 sign up, is there a deadline on when they need to use this fund by? Because I'd imagine we don't want it just out there for too long.
Yeah, I think we get the information first.
Okay.
And then we can
Sure.
talk about that.
Okay, thank you.
To the chair, I don't think there was a deadline in the resolution, but if it's something that's not gonna be fully used, then we can reallocate it.
Right.
So.
Okay, thank you very much. With that, motion to receive the report, moved by Director Demers, second by Director Mack. Comments? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is concrete assessment for the Downs Lake wildfire. Hello.
Omar Butt, Director of Environmental Services.
Mark Phillips, Director of Protective Services.
This report came out of the last, the June board meeting, where the board had a resolution for staff to hire a contractor to determine the estimated volume of concrete required for removal on private properties. With the short timeline for turnaround to meet this board meeting, we created a permission form right away to send out to residents. It was emailed to all residents who suffered property loss. We published it on our recovery website and also sent a reminder email, and then we presented it at the town hall as well. So kind of trying to get as much intake as possible. We worked with a contractor who was already doing work up there as well. And we did get eight property owners approval to review their properties. So that the report kind of highlights the concrete that was found on there and an estimated removal cost from this specific contractor. I think that's all I have, so open the floor. Questions?
Director French, go ahead.
I'm curious to know how much work has been put into a whole different solution. Being take a concrete crusher or crushers to the site, crush the concrete and use it as road base up there. Has staff done any checking into that scenario?
Yes, sorry, through the chair. That was one of our early conversations, and we reached out to the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure. And they indicated that there wasn't a need, and actually concrete would not be a suitable kind of product for the road base so they were not interested in using it for crush. Yep.
Okay, so road base, not an option. Could there potentially be other uses for that material that eliminates the need to take it away?
Driveways.
Yeah, driveways, parking, paths, that sort of thing.
So that is a possibility. We've discussed with the Ministry of Environment and Waterlands and Resources on their opinion on that, and obviously they want all of the material out of the riparian area. But they, as far as driveways and landscaping, that is an option. There is just also, you also have to take back the risks of crushed concrete and the silica dust and things like that. Crushing the concrete should be done at a specific site, kind of away from, you know, the residential areas and environment, because that again, that lets off lots of toxins. But it is an option, and there are people that do that type of work.
Through the chair, if I can spend a little bit on that. One of the questions that was being asked right up until today in talking to the province and other areas, including about air quality. I think we have to separate I know a guy who had someone bring a crusher to their property, crush it, and then used it for their own driveway or their own thing, to an entire community of crusher being in there and the air quality impact. And that's where there's a constraint. So the solution being tipping fees, turning it away, or finding an area nearby where it can all happen that is safely away. So as opposed to one day, multiple days, you start hitting air quality constraints.
I think that's helpful, and I'd also be interested in the noise that the neighbors would experience. Go ahead.
Okay, I've got a whole bunch of questions here, and I sent them to staff this morning. So I'll just quickly go through them, and some of these have been answered a bit already. Can concrete, once clean, be left as is in the riparian zone? Can concrete be buried on the property above the riparian zone?
Do you want to go
Clean.
one by one, Sal, so that they can,
Uh,
or do you just want to put them
no,
on the table?
yeah, they've already got these questions, so.
Do you want an answer now, or do you want?
No, when I'm done, because it's kind of all related, right? Can clean concrete be used as retaining walls or as paving stones outside of the riparian zone? Can clean crushed concrete be used for driveways or fill outside of the riparian zone? The number of fireplace chimneys that are made of brick, can they be crushed for fill or used for something else outside the riparian area? Chimneys, of course, have the internal flues which may or will have smoke-related contamination, and most of the chimneys are still standing there. And then we talked about that contractor. There is a contractor that has a crushing machine that is actually working on the Firelaw's properties right now. It's not up there yet, but yeah. So those could be takeaways, but if we can use that material in the valley and save that transportation cost all the way to Lillooet.
So we can address those. The riparian area one's a bit murky because obviously you don't want to contaminate that area. So if you can somehow get it cleaned up without disturbing it and contaminating that area, I think that's fine. Concrete can't be buried on the property. That was from Ministry of Environment, is considered a discharge of waste to ground anywhere on property. Retaining walls and landscape paving stones, it can be used. Retaining walls, if they're above 1.2 meters, then it needs a geotech and building permit involved. And then we talk about driveways and fill outside for landscaping, things like that. It can be used as well.
Yeah, and I think through the chair, I think the last question was about chimneys and the flues. I think same goes that if it is contaminated, it needs to be dealt with. The contaminants can't be in there, but if it's concrete debris that's left, then in the same piece of apply. That will apply. Yeah. But I think the basis of that within the riparian area, it's not allowed. But outside of the riparian area, it is allowed. But I think it also needs to be just noted that concrete it doesn't compact well, as Omar mentioned before, that the dust, silica dust, can cause silicus or silicosis or lung cancer. So I think it is just something that those who are around that or are crushing it or using that, there are health issues associated with that.
Yeah, I realized we'd have to have a site someplace that it could be crushed away from our properties in a certain distance. Because of noise too. But yeah, if we can use it that way, then it makes it a lot easier. And I don't know I'm gonna actually make this happen, but again, in the newsletter, go to those 56 properties, I think we can give them some communication on it. And if we're gonna do the crushing, then I think staff work with that particular contractor that has it and see if we can come up with a plan.
I'm just gonna turn it over to the CAO for input.
I really appreciate these questions and really appreciate the staff following up on the answers. Thank you so much. And they have been asking many questions on options. I want to refocus on what these options are here. I asked staff, should transportation costs be eliminated? What are we talking about? The idea was, will there still be some transportation because you'd have to go to a site, it's not as far and the tipping fees are removed. So it was estimated that possibly a third would be cut off of that cost. So the cost here will be maybe 200 to 250K realized with, and that is not official numbers. It's really just a paper calculator at this point, and that would be if all 56 properties were participating. Keeping in mind, we only had answers from 8 properties, and there was a lot of pushing with 42 people on the call, pushed again to ask them to respond, and there was still 8 responses. I think the question here for me, for clarification for staff, is what is being proposed for the staff to organize? How is that going to be paid for? What is being proposed to be done? How is that going to be paid for? Is it recovered in taxation? Is it recovered through different funding options? Is it, and there's options that are presented in this report that I think you've been able to review, and they consider costs and in cases consider staff time. And for us to go back and do more research, I want to go back to Director Phillips' comment of earlier with the fire review, something being on the work plan, but other things are coming up. And a lot of this is what's coming up. And I'm not saying it's not the wrong thing to do. It's recovery, and recovery is a very important thing. And it means something is in need. Keeping in mind the impacts, we are not staffed for this at the moment. And we are staffed to actually just reprioritize things. It's just, we're going to be reprioritizing things. But my big question at the table for the board is, before my ask is to go back and do more research is a struggle. Because this is an immediate need for response, and I'd like the board to consider the options. And we will take direction as whatever direction you have. Just wanted to make note of that. I'm managing I'm managing a large group of staff with a lot of needs coming at them.
Okay, thank you. And I think the board is sensitive to the work that we do is to balance the needs of all of the areas and all of the residents, and by some measure leave space for the uncertainty about what is coming at us. As we've seen, these conditions change quickly, and we could be pulled off this work to attend to wildfires in other areas, or There's many reasons that this is challenging work. So I think we need to be alive to that. But
So there is one other option. And that's, since they can, it seems like outside the riparian zone, the people could temporarily store all their concrete up there on the, on the upper part of their properties. So that's simple ask to the province. If that can be done, then, we can, hopefully the property owners can work through that. And hopefully prior to the tree planting program from Caribou Carbon, which will take at least a year before they come and start that program. Because then by then something will have to happen up there on their properties. And then we can work through that issue in the spring, like work through it through the winter with the property owners and come up with some solutions to that whole concrete issue.
So would that be option one then? There'd be no budget attached, we'd be staying with the current process, and then staff would be requesting that the province allow for. So that'd be sort of option 1A, a request to the province to allow for storage on site.
Yeah.
I'd be interested in, through the chair, staff's thoughts on that concept.
So through the chair, we have from MOE and from others that this material concrete can be used as retaining walls, as paving stones and things like that. In terms of storage, we can seek clarity on that question. I think the crux of a lot of these issues is that this is on private property. And our mandate and our role is unclear, or our role is not related to the cleanup of private property. We are continuing to work with the province and pursuing and trying to identify NGOs and other groups that could support understanding that this is a significant barrier for those folks who are trying to recover. But I think the main issue is that this is private property, and how far can we go to actually clean up this private property? I think it's the question of mandate here as well. But fully recognize the challenge, and we're trying to find opportunities where there could be supports for these individuals. Yeah, but I think the storage question, we'd be happy to take that forward and could get an answer on that quickly.
I'd second option 1A if that's what you're.
okay, so the motion on the floor is 1A, which is continue waste and transportation management as it is outlined in the current budget. No further consideration or subsidy for removal, with a letter or with a request to province for more clarity on whether or not the concrete can be stored on the site temporarily.
Outside the riparian area.
Right. Okay. Right.
Just a contextual question, and I'm not sure if it's already been answered, but I know asbestos testing has been done. My understanding is that concrete can sometimes contain asbestos. Do we have a sense of that risk with the concrete, or if there's anything there, or is this actually I'm mistaken and concrete and asbestos aren't generally combined?
They can be combined. I don't know. I haven't been looking at those reports to know who's done what with their property and their concrete. I believe that you can clean off your concrete so that you're removing that asbestos and leave it there. I'm not going to speak to the methods of that. I don't.
Yeah. Director Herford.
Thank you. Just briefly, I was surprised at the lack of response for this piece, and I think if our conversation today has really highlighted that there are options available to deal with this. If we had some alignment of, you know, everybody there wanted to do the removal, maybe we could play a larger role. But given the conversation, I think I'm fine with where I think it's reasonable where we've landed. But the conversation has brought out just another layer of complexity in all of this. So yeah, but happy to support. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. This is your time for comments, Sal.
Is it comment?
Comment.
With regards to burial, I've thought about that, you know, at length. And I guess one of the reasons is if that property ever sells, then there's a whole lot of concrete in an area that person wants to develop. Next thing you know, they're here, they're digging, and they come up with all this concrete. So kind of, I'm gonna have to agree with that burial thing, because that wouldn't be right. If it's sitting up on the ground, you know it's there already.
Okay.
But yeah.
Thank you. All the questions, all in favor? Are any opposed? Great. It's almost that time. We're gonna do a 5-minute stretch. We're calling this meeting back to order. We're now at 9.10, a request for decision regarding the application to Disaster Resilience and Innovation Funding Program, and we have Ms. Campbell here. Good afternoon.
Would the board like a presentation on it, or?
No, I think this may be questions, if that's fine. Okay. Questions? Not even any questions. Okay, you want to make the motion of the first two that's?
Yes.
Okay, do I need to read them?
No. No.
Moved by Director Crompton, seconded by Director Mack. Comments? All in favor? Are there any opposed? Motion carries. The next that. Moved by Director Crompton, seconded by Director Mack. Comments? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. The last that. Moved by Director Rainbow, seconded by Director Crompton. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
The consideration.
Well done. Well done. You did a good job.
Yeah, great report.
Yeah.
Gonna do your job. Okay, 9.11. EDIF application for one-time funding by the Pemberton Valley Seniors Society. And this is a weighted participant vote between only Area C and the Village of Pemberton.
Yeah, I'll move it.
Moved by Director Mack, seconded by Director Richmond. Do you want me to read it? You don't.
What's the weighting like right here?
I don't know.
I think Ross is heavier than
Funding comes from the two sources, VOP and.
No, I know,
How
I
many
just wonder,
votes does each?
yeah, like I'm wondering if one of them voted against it. Wonder that on your own time. Wonder that on your own time.
All in favor?
Wonder that on your own.
Neither of you is opposed. Motion carries.
So that was option one.
Correct.
Thank you.
Right.
Okay,
Cheers, Bob.
cheers verbal. I have nothing for today.
Whoa.
Oh, right, just keep, jeez.
Do I?
Golf tournament.
Okay, moving along to correspondence for action regarding funding for the Statlium Future Scholarship fundraiser. Which takes place September 26th. I think this is a good opportunity for us to share. This is a great opportunity to support a community group in the region. Would anyone like to move? Receipt? Go ahead. You can make any motion you want, Russell. What would you like to do with this?
No, I guess I just have a question.
Sure.
So where is this funding to come from? From all of us, or like from general government, or?
whoever makes the motion gets to make the motion. So you could make the motion to move it from one of your funds, or we could move it from general funds,
Well,
or.
normally because it's coming from. Yeah, anyways, I guess because it's, so what I'm gonna bring up with Suzanne and I guess the board is something. Any Area C funds that are allotted to golf tournaments, whatever, organizations, I would like that money to be spent, in Area C, like so for golf tournaments and such. So when I saw that this golf tournament is gonna be in Whistler, I thought it should be coming then from the general board, not specifically Area C.
Okay.
Does that make any sense?
I hear you. The reason that this is taking place at that golf course, the beneficiaries of the charity are not in Whistler, or maybe in Whistler. But this isn't to direct this funding to Whistler.
To the chair, I think I hear both of you and although yes, supporting all the local businesses in Area C is probably top priority, while also supporting the charitable impacts in the nation's community in Area C. As I understand it, the uptake for attendance and the increase of fundraising, and I believe being given a very preferred rate, the organization, we may realize more fundraising by hosting and listening this year. We want being in Scotland. It's also a new territory. And the benefits are definitely, a lot of it's realized here. But I see both points.
Okay.
Just a clarification for me, you know, the charity is Stallion Government Services, but so is this actual government that is asking for this, or is this a not-for-profit?
This is a fundraiser for our scholarship fund. We're looking for donations. So this is a scholarship for the students presumably within the Shetland Nation, of which there are many communities, one of them being Lillooet. So it's not a government organization receiving this money. This money is going into a scholarship fund.
But the request is coming from government or a not-for-profit?
Through the chair, yeah, they also act as a nonprofit, and we could get clarification whether or not they're receiving this through one of their nonprofits and representing that nonprofit through their government services. The Indian Act up until recently made it kind of difficult to, you had to have many nonprofits in order to own and manage things, so probably the details of it. Maybe that government services supporting an existing nonprofit underneath the Stratton community.
And I guess I'm just trying to wrap my head around, because to me, I have a sort of bucket for not-for-profits and then a bucket for nation governments is a different thing, but feels like an important distinction to me. So I'm just trying to wrap my head around it.
Right.
How does Stallion Government Services relate to the Lower Stallion Tribal Council or the Upper Stallion Tribal Council? Do they oversee those two organizations? They do, okay.
They're for all the Stallion.
So Lower Stallion reports into Stallion Government Services, I see.
Director Rainbow and then Director Mack.
Yeah, sort of speaking to Russell's point there, when I read this, Shetland Government Services, you know, for scholarships, I was assuming that because it was on this agenda, that wasn't just the little one, that was just, I think it was all the way across area A, B, and C. And
sure,
if that's the case, then I can see why Russell's saying maybe this shouldn't just come from area C money, maybe it should come from somewhere else. So, yeah.
I'm gonna go to Viv because she's had her hand up for.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay, it's my fault. You're muted, Viv.
Thank you. When I first read this, I thought it's too bad this didn't come to me earlier, because then I would have done some footwork to establish just exactly who this group is covering. As I've received requests in the past, and I mean, just like Director Pettingill said, with the select funds, you know, I'd like to have a nonprofit society to donate to, but I'm not sure that this is. I'm pretty sure that it's not. But to my knowledge, Statlium Government Services is located in the northern part of the territory, and I don't believe they're covering the southern Statlium. We don't have enough information here, I don't think. And I'm sorry to say that. My first instinct was to say, well, if this is happening in Whistler, if Whistler wants to put in $1,000, then I'll put in $1,000 from Area B and we can do a bronze. And then I saw farther down the line, ooh, there's the opportunity for a cash donation just to go towards the scholarship fund. I would prefer to do that, but I would like a report on how the money was spent. So I'd like to support this, but I have questions. I'm not sure the best way to choose which source of funding, but I also see the time pressure. So I was listening and changing what I was going to say as you guys were talking, actually.
Director Mayor, Director Mack, Director Rainbow. Go ahead. You're next, yeah.
Yeah, I would suggest, one of the issues there that there's 4 people can attend and be in a group, right? I don't golf.
Or we can just sponsor it and not participate in the tournament.
Yeah, so we could definitely use $2,500 from the general select. There's not much there, but I think it's a good opportunity for us to contribute to this program. Now, with a caveat that staff look to make sure that we can actually, that we are funded a nonprofit organization. And like Vivian said, specifically for scholarships.
Okay, thank you. Okay,
That's fine.
okay, Director Rainbow.
I'd just like to say, I think this is another example of this correspondence for action. So this has been addressed to the SLRD. And that it's, instead of it going straight onto this agenda, it might be better if it were referred to the EAD to give electoral area directors a chance to do a little bit of homework, have a better idea of who this involves, where the money's going and so forth. And then if we want to pay for it out of select funds, it's done and dusted. If we want to bring it to the board to do, you know, from the amenities or some other way, then we bring a recommendation to the board. The discussion we've had today, this when it's appeared on the agenda was the first time I've seen it. First time any of us seen it. So I just think there are times when staff receive something from addressed to SLRD, the determination should be who's this affect, and refer it to that director or those directors and ask them to bring it back.
Okay.
Thank you.
Through the chair, thank you for that note. The reason why I was put on this was because of timing, understanding that by the time the EAD was meeting in mid-September, the request would be a very late response to something that they already would be probably beyond the fundraising, and sponsorship would have been it's a good intergovernmental relations option here.
We don't have enough information to decide where that money is going to come from. I feel like there are more questions today than there were, than there is sort of blanket support. So would anyone like to make a motion to any effect, whether it's to receive or to refer it back to staff?
I'll make a motion to refer it back to staff to get more information as to who we're actually dealing with here.
Yeah.
Northern, southern, all of them.
Accepting the fact that we will run out of time to enact any.
It could come back to the EAD if we're gonna use select funds, as Director Rainbow said, it could come to the EAD and we can pass that. We have that authority to do that, right?
Yeah, it'll just be too late for them to, probably September's EAD meeting will be like a week before their.
2 weeks.
2 weeks before.
Yeah.
So maybe it works. Jack,
The board is like Chantel Lafarge, Rebecca Barley, Susan James, Ernest Armand, Char John, like this is both south and.
Oh,
north.
yeah.
So this is.
Because you're talking to Quadco there.
Yeah, Naquaqua, it's like, it's
Yeah.
everywhere. So it is
Yeah.
everywhere.
You're right.
I wanna make.
I think that the path that we were
Yeah, that's.
going down was a good one where we're gonna like do the general select and move on, because it is that we've decided it is everybody.
Okay, I did not get a seconder on your motion. Will you withdraw that motion?
I'll withdraw.
We'll make the motion to move this as a silver sponsorship out of general select funds.
Yeah.
Move that,
I'll move that.
second that. Further comments? Go ahead.
Just as part of our ongoing reconciliation work, I would sort of hope to elevate sort of funding interactions with First Nations governments to a different level than our sort of standard not-for-profit request for support. And I don't know exactly how or what that looks like, but that feels like an important distinction to me.
Okay. Go ahead, and I'll come back to you.
I could not agree more, and I think the way we would do that is show up. And we're supposed to be in a committee of the whole on the 26th, and with this, we get a whole sponsorship, and if we were there, like we did this
Super fun.
for the Worcester Chamber Golf Tournament, we were there and we were hanging out with people and just present. I wonder if we don't cancel our September committee of the whole and ask ourselves to attend the golf tournament, not as golfers, but as
Full attendant.
like welcoming people and hang out and be a part.
What a good idea.
With that, could we defer it to the Cal meeting tomorrow
Oh, sure.
and have staff research if it's a nonprofit organization where the funding is going? And specifically, we would like it to go to the scholarship fund.
Sure.
I thought that's what it was.
I'm good.
So we'd have to,
He's just saying come back tomorrow. Just defer it tonight until tomorrow, because we're gonna have
And
more on the agenda tomorrow. Go ahead.
And in that case, then maybe staff could also check with finance to see if they can indeed cut a check to this organization. Because I've certainly run up against that. The way I've gotten around it in the past, for example, a request for a powwow, I wound up paying for the facility rental. You know, like there's different ways that we can still support this, but we should find out if finance will proceed with writing a check to this organization from select funds specifically, because they have some rules around that.
Got you. Jack,
It's $2,500. I'd encourage us to vote on it and approve it. This is Stallion Government Services. I don't think it necessarily matters if they're a nonprofit or they're a government that we're participating in their fundraising to provide scholarships. So I'm hopeful that we'll vote in favor right now rather than take time tomorrow.
thank you. The motion is on the floor. Go ahead, Director Herford.
Yeah, thank you. I'm just supportive of the direction that Jack's or Director Crompton's proposed here, and with the caveat that if staff takes this direction away and from whatever reason can't write a check to this entity, then come back and see us. But we need to investigate that overnight. But rather get it through here right now. And then if it needs to come back, we do have a bit of a safety tomorrow. I know it's a quick turnaround, but rather than re-enter into this discussion if we don't need to.
Okay. So general select funds is delegated to the EAD committee, so we can't make that decision. So we're gonna find something out. We're gonna come back to this tomorrow. We're not doing anything. I think the motion is deferred to tomorrow. Is everyone comfortable with that? Great.
You good?
Just
Is it helpful?
I need help, yeah. So coming back tomorrow, I just want to be clear, we're gonna look to see what the avenue is for funding it and making a motion tomorrow. It sounds like everyone wants to confirm whether or not this is, and that fund would be eligible for this area, this government. As I understand, I've checked with Director Lefmanis in the past, and government bodies are nonprofits and qualified. So just to be clear, those are the only two things I'm clarifying, what funding can come out of and confirming that this qualifies for that funding.
Yes.
Okay.
We give a lot of scholarships to the school district, which is a government rather than a not-for-profit.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Lively discussions. Moving on. Any late business? Don't see any. Additional late? No. Okay, correspondence for action, UCM convention meeting requests. You already do these?
That's the
Oh, for
deadline.
the health authorities.
No, thanks.
No. Anyone? No. Okay. So motion to receive the letter, please. Moved by Director Hopeful, second by Director Mack. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Prairie Creek Community Association Open Spaces Caretaker, they request funding for a pilot project to assess the feasibility of employing a part-time caretaker. Up to $6,000 from Area B amenity funds.
Yeah, sorry, I would, but I'd like to make that eight. Did I put, was it in here? 6,000?
In our conversation with six, but that's.
Did I say six when we were talking?
This is a timing thing again.
Yeah,
Okay,
can I change it to eight then?
alright, there's no motion on the floor, so you
No,
can make a
exactly.
motion to say
Yeah.
it.
Okay.
I'll get up to 10.
Moved by.
Yeah.
Seconded by Director Richmond. Comment? All question, all in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries.
And we did check with Suzanne that it could come out of that fund.
Fantastic. Correspondence for information from the Ministry of Ag and Food. Addressing drought challenges. Motion to receive. Moved by Director Mack, seconded by Director French. Any comments? All in favor? Are there any opposed? Motion carries. Are there any notices of motion?
We have this forests.
13.5, I skipped one.
Motion to receive.
Ministry of Forests. Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Comment? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Notice of motion? Seeing none? Do I have someone, or no, I get to move. We're recessing this board meeting at 3:17.
But you have to come home now?